The video message from my daughter-in-law, Lena, landed like a slap to the face. There she was on the screen, perfectly made up, her blonde hair cascading over designer clothing, a fake smile plastered on her lips. "Hi, Marlene, Theo," she began in that sickly sweet tone. "I'm reaching out about Aiden's 5th birthday bash next month. It's a major milestone, so we want to make it extra special." Here it comes, I thought, exchanging a wary glance with Theo. Ever since Elliot married this Instagram beauty queen, her demands on us had only grown. "A little birdie told me you two were looking to get Aiden something amazing for his big day." Lena batted her fake eyelashes. "Well, I'm making it easy. Aiden would absolutely love a brand new swimming pool installed in our backyard." My jaw dropped. A pool? Those ran tens of thousands of dollars, even for a basic model. Nothing too fancy. Lena continued with a dismissive hair toss. "Just your standard issue resort-style in-ground pool with a pool house, hot tub, the whole 9 yards. You know how much Aiden loves swimming." She droned on with more details of her extravagant vision, but I'd stopped listening. This was absurd. After years of her entitled behavior, this felt like the final straw. "So let me know if you need any other details. But really, make it worthwhile or don't even bother showing up." Lena flashed one last grin before the video cut out. The silence hung heavy between Theo and me. "She can't be serious," I finally sputtered. Theo sighed, squeezing the bridge of his nose. "When is she not? You know how Lena gets." I did know. Ever since Elliot brought this artificially sweet, high-maintenance woman into our lives, she'd made increasingly outrageous demands under the guise of making memories for our grandson Aiden. Expensive Disney cruises, designer clothes, even a celebrity kiddie party planner for his 4th birthday bash. And Lena always spun it as being for Aiden, but anyone could see the real priority was herself and her influencer image. But this took things to another level. A fully decked-out pool just for a kid's birthday? It was obscene. "We can't," I said flatly. "Theo, we don't have that kind of money. Even if we scraped everything we had, there's no way." Tears pricked my eyes, a mix of anger, hurt and exasperation churning inside me. This was our family she was talking about, not one of her online audiences to impress. I could see the same emotions etched on Theo's face as he pulled me into a hug. For a long moment, we clung to each other, united against Lena's audacious demand. But Theo eventually pulled back, resignation in his eyes. Maybe we could look into something smaller," he said tentatively. "We both have been putting in extra hours at work, and there's my pension fund that'll be available soon." I stared at him, stunned he'd even entertained such lunacy. "You're not seriously considering this?" He shrugged helplessly. "It's for our grandson, Marlene. If doing this might help get Lena off our backs, keep Elliot and Aiden in our lives." His words trailed off, but I could hear the unspoken meaning loud and clear. If giving Lena what she demanded was the price for preserving our family, for keeping Elliot and Aiden from being completely poisoned by her distorted values. Reopening the wound she just inflicted, Lena's parting words echoed in my mind. "Make it worthwhile, or don't bother showing up." My heart ached at the thought of being cut off from my only grandchild over this, but I also couldn't fathom bankrupting ourselves for one of Lena's tantrums. Squaring my shoulders, I met Theo's worried gaze. No matter what it took, I wouldn't let this woman fracture our family. We had to find a way to make this right. The days blurred together after that bombshell from Lena. Every conversation, every interaction seemed to circle back to her outrageous pool demand. "We could put a home equity loan on the house," Theo mused one night over dinner, "just to cover the upfront costs." I nearly choked on my food. "Are you insane? Go into debt over this? We're not made of money." He wilted under my glare. "I'm just trying to think of options, honey. You know how Lena gets when she doesn't get her way." I slammed my fork down with more force than intended. "So what? We just roll over for her every tantrum? Where does it end?" The haunted look in Theo's eyes said it all. We both knew there was no endpoint with Lena, not unless one of us put our foot down. Still, the threat of being cut off from Elliot and Aiden loomed over us like a curse. In a way, that's exactly what Lena had become, a curse upon our family. The demands only escalated from there. Suddenly she was calling constantly, texting incessant updates about party planning she needed our input on. Her reasoning didn't even make sense half the time. She just wanted to soak up our energy and resources. One afternoon, I arrived home from the library to find Theo elbow-deep in sketches and spreadsheets. "What's all this?" I asked in bewilderment. "Lena stopped by with one of her vision boards," he sighed, looking 20 years older. "She had it all mapped out, the pool, the landscaping, even a pool house with its own kitchen and bar." "You're kidding." I sank onto the couch, anger roiling in my gut. "She brought this insanity into our home?" "She said this is the only way Aiden will be happy." Theo raked a hand through his thinning hair warily. "That we're depriving him if we don't make his dream come true." My jaw clenched hard enough to crack teeth. "That's a bunch of crap. This is about her, not Aiden." I know. Theo turned back to the coffee table of binders and portfolios, misery etched in the slump of his shoulders. "But maybe if we put in some reasonable requests, she'll settle for less? Or maybe she'll keep demanding more." I threw up my hands in frustration. Since when did we start going broke for that woman's ego? The shrill ring of Theo's phone cut off his reply. Lena's smiling face flashing on the screen, he shot me an apologetic look and answered, jaw tensing as she launched into another tirade. I watched him nod along like a beaten dog, offering feeble uh-huhs and "we'll sees" in response to her endless stream of wants. When he finally hung up 20 minutes later, I could no longer hold back my fury. "I'm drawing the line, Theo. This is utter madness." Sagging back against the sofa, he looked utterly defeated. "She threatened not to let us see Aiden if we don't give in, Marlene. What are we supposed to do?" My heart twisted at the mere thought of losing our grandson, of Aiden being shaped and twisted by that woman's distorted values, without our stabilizing presence to guide him. It was a waking nightmare. But I also knew we couldn't keep indulging Lena's deranged spending and entitlement complex. It was a vicious, self-perpetuating cycle. Someone had to put their foot down, even if it meant confronting the worst possible outcome. Meeting Theo's haunted gaze, I drew a steadying breath. We need a plan. One that finally puts this madness to bed, without losing our family over it. His eyes widened briefly, then narrowed to cold steel. At last, we were on the same page. No more being manipulated, no more cowering to Lena's histrionics. For the sake of our grandchild, the kid glove treatment was officially over. Aiden's 5th birthday party was every bit the overblown spectacle Lena had threatened. Dozens of shrieking kids swarmed the backyard she'd decked out like a carnival midway. Balloon arches, a massive bounce house, even a live petting zoo dominated our modest suburban yard. "Can you believe this madness?" I muttered to Theo as we wove through the chaos, searching for our grandson. He grimaced, eyes bouncing from the whirring rides to the team of princessed-up party performers putting on a show. "Try not to let it get to you today. We're here for Aiden, remember?" Easy for him to say. My teeth ground with each new display of excess I took in. An entire hide worth of party food piled onto tables, an electric train ride blaring its caller through the neighborhood. All for one little boy's birthday. But Lena was the true ringmaster of this 3-ring circus. She flitted through the crowd in a designer sundress that cost more than my monthly mortgage, greeting guests with air kisses and fake laughs. Her social media friend posed beside her for countless staged photo ops. When she finally deigned to notice us, her sugary smile didn't reach her eyes. "Well, if it isn't the party poopers, so glad you two could join." I opened my mouth, every biting remark I'd rehearsed rising to my tongue. But Theo squeezed my hand in warning. "We're happy to be here for Aiden's big day," he replied tightly. Yes, about that." Lena's eyes flicked across the yard, sweeping dismissively over the chaos surrounding us. "I must admit, I'm a little disappointed. I thought you two loved your grandson enough to go all out." I bristled at her condescending tone, taking in the insanity all around us. "You're kidding me, right? This spectacle is enough for 10 birthdays. "Oh, honey, don't be so bourgeois." She patted my cheek in a way that made me want to slap it. "You know that's just how us influencers do things. Go big or go home, right?" The fake, tinkling laugh that followed made my blood boil. Bourgeois? She was the one blowing enough cash for a down payment on a house on this ridiculous circus. "Where's the gift, anyway?" She tapped one designer heel impatiently. "I gave you too ample time to make this a memorable bash for Aiden." "The gift?" Theo sputtered, shifting uncomfortably. We didn't get the chance to really. Don't tell me you punted on that too. Lena's face contorted into a sneer, drawing looks from nearby guests. See, this is exactly why I keep my expectations low for you two. So painfully pedestrian. That was the final straw. I jabbed a finger at the spectacle surrounding us, fury making me tremble. Are you out of your mind? Look at all this. How could you possibly need or want anything more? Ooh, someone's getting a little big for her britches. Lena ran her eyes over me with barely disguised contempt. I expected better than this pathetic display from my husband's parents. Truly disappointing. As her social circle began murmuring and leaning in, I saw red. The only disappointment here is you, using Aiden as an excuse to bankrupt us over this gaudy. Mommy? The small, timid voice caused the breath to catch in my throat. I turned to find Aiden himself standing there, party hat askew and confusion written on his cherubic features. What's going on? His wide eyes bounced between Lena and me. For a long, tense beat, the entire party seemed to hold its collective breath, waiting for Lena's response. Then her features melted into an exaggerated pout, and she rushed to pull Aiden against her hip. Oh, sweetie, your mean old grandma's just upset she couldn't get you that new pool you wanted. Pool? The poor kid looked even more bewildered. Yes, for your birthday. Tears welled in Lena's eyes as she stroked his hair. But she and Grandpa are just being selfish old grumps about giving you your present. Aiden's gaze bounced between Lena and us, innocent incomprehension melting into dismay. The sight twisted my heart into knots. Lena, as always, had spun a web of lies to paint herself as the hapless victim. But I didn't want a pool, Aiden mumbled meekly. A hush fell over the entire yard as every eye turned toward Lena, awaiting her response. Her jaw tightened for a fraction of a second before she threw an arm around Aiden, sobbing dramatically. Of course you didn't, sweetie. She locked eyes with me over his head, that vindictive smile back in place. How could you want something so frivolous when you have such a thoughtful mom who's about to give you a baby sibling? My heart plummeted somewhere into my shoes. As a new flood of cries and gasps filled the yard, surrounding us in a swell of shock, Lena just stared at me in cold triumph. In that moment, I knew nothing would ever be the same. The fallout from Aiden's disastrous birthday bash was swift and absolute. In the days and weeks after Lena's conniving pregnancy reveal, a palpable rift formed in our family. Elliot, ever the doting husband, rallied behind his devious wife without question. She's under a lot of stress and hormones right now, he protested whenever Theo or I tried reasoning with him. We need to be supportive. Supportive? After the humiliating spectacle she made of us in front of all those people, over her ludicrous lies about wanting a pool for Aiden, the mere thought made my blood boil. But Elliot simply waved off our concerns, too besotted to see Lena's true colors. Instead, the two of them retreated further into their social media bubble, posting a deluge of videos and photo ops about her radiant pregnancy journey. Meanwhile, our access to our actual grandson continued dwindling at Lena's behest. Every attempt at a visit or outing was rebuffed with another flimsy excuse about her difficult pregnancy and need for rest. I tried pushing back, calling Elliot out on our unfair treatment, but he only grew more defensive. Why can't you be happy for us? He snapped during one tense exchange after I insisted on having Aiden over for Theo's birthday. I threw up my hands in disgust. Of course we're happy you're having another child, but this goes far beyond that, and you know it. Elliot's jaw tightened mulishly. No, I don't know that. All I see are my parents acting jealous and bitter about our growing family. The hurtful accusation struck deep, rendering me momentarily speechless. How could my own son be so blind to the manipulation swirling around him? I stalked off before I said something I'd regret, fighting back angry tears. In the den, I found Theo watching the latest Lena video with a pained expression. Did you see this garbage? I scoffed, gesturing at the screen where Lena cooed about her pregnancy glow and upcoming nursery design. She's airing all our dirty laundry for clicks. Theo shook his head slowly. Not just that. Check out the comments. A quick skim revealed a distressing number of replies bashing us, calling us cruel and unsupportive, all based on the twisted story Lena was peddling about her humble family. Clicking off the video in disgust, I sank into the sofa beside Theo. I don't know how much more of this I can take. He draped a comforting arm around my shoulders, the wariness in his eyes mirroring my own. We knew there'd be backlash for standing up to Lena. She's not going to let this slide. So we're just supposed to sit back while she smears us in public? Cuts us off from our own grandchild over her petty schemes? Tears of frustration stung my eyes. Of course not, but we need to be smart about our next move. As if on cue, Theo's phone chimed with a new text notification. Something in his expression shifted as he read the message. "What is it?" I asked warily. He held the phone out, letting me read the message from an unknown number. "Evidence against Lena. Seeing you suffer kills me, but I can help. Attached are files on her real spending priorities. No need to thank me. I'll remain anonymous. Do what you must." My breath caught as I scrolled through the suspicious attachments. Bank statements detailing massive sums of money, photographs appearing to show Lena out partying and gallivanting while Aiden was off-screen. Could this be legitimate? "Who's this from?" I asked in a hushed voice, dread and a sliver of hope warring within me. Theo shook his head, lips set in a grim line. "No idea. But whoever they are, they just handed us the key to bringing Lena down once and for all." My heart stuttered at the thought, at finally being able to strike back at her manipulative lies and power plays, to save Aiden from her toxic influence. But to do so could risk severing our family ties for good. Elliot would surely take Lena's side, blinded by her false narratives. Theo must have seen the turmoil playing out on my face, because he squeezed my hand fiercely, leaning until our eyes met. "This may be our only chance, Marlene. Our best shot at getting Aiden away from her poisonous influence, by any means necessary." The words hung heavy in the air, their implication clear. This was it, our point of no return that would alter the course of our family forever. No matter how it played out in the aftermath, we couldn't back down from this make-or-break moment, not if it meant protecting Aiden's future. With a shuddering exhale, I nodded to Theo. Time to stop walking on eggshells around Lena once and for all. Time to fight back. After the damning evidence from our anonymous source, Theo and I wasted no time springing into action against Lena. We began compiling every scrap of proof we could find, racking our brains for past incidents and manipulations she'd pulled over the years. With my background as a librarian, I focused on conducting meticulous online research, while Theo tapped his network of colleagues and parents at the high school for any whispers about Lena's unscrupulous behavior. No stone was left unturned in our quest to expose her web of lies. "Did you know the Hensons cut ties with Lena after their son's birthday party last year?" Theo told me one evening over coffee, eyes bright with vindication. I raised my eyebrows. "No, I didn't. What happened?" "Apparently she hosted this overblown princess bash for their daughter, then badmouthed them on social media for being cheap with their gift." Theo shook his head in disgust. "Jane said Lena has an entire hate folder on her phone, with screenshots of messages going back months." My blood boiled at the thought of more innocent families being dragged through the mud by that wretched snake. "I want copies of everything. We're blowing this whole farce wide open." Theo nodded grimly, determination etched into every line of his weathered face. For too long, we'd suffered in silence, taking Lena's abuse in misguided hopes of protecting our family. But now, armed with the truth and a growing arsenal of evidence, we were going to make her pay for her manipulation, one way or another. And I refused to let Aiden remain trapped in her toxic orbit any longer. The plan took shape over hushed discussions at our kitchen table, fueled by righteous indignation and the occasional glass of wine to steady our nerves. After raising our finances on tight budgets for so long, even the idea of striking back at Lena carried immense risk. But seeing the despicable way she'd used and discarded other families for her own gratification, her callous treatment of Aiden, it all hardened our resolve. This was about more than just settling a personal vendetta. "What if we started an anonymous website?" I proposed one night, tapping my pencil restlessly against my notepad. "A landing spot to release all the evidence to the public without directly confronting her." Theo frowned, rubbing his chin. "Isn't that a bit passive, though? You know Lena, she'll just spin it as more hater attacks and bury the truth with her own propaganda blitz." "Maybe?" I worried my lip, then my eyes drifted to the teetering pile of manila folders brimming with damning documents. Or maybe we go straight to the source. He lifted one bushy eyebrow. You want to slip this all to Elliot? I shrugged, nerves fluttering in my belly. It's a risk, sure, but at this point, a direct intervention might be our only hope of finally breaking through to him and the truth. The thought of turning our own son against his wife, no matter how vile she'd proven to be, made my stomach churn. But I couldn't shake the memory of his haunted, oblivious expression at Aiden's party as Lena spun her web, too blinded by her manipulation to see the toxic reality. Releasing all our gathered evidence in one fell swoop, overwhelming him with proof of her true nature. It could be the wake-up call Elliot so desperately needed to escape her grasp. Theo sighed heavily, reaching across to squeeze my hand. It's a bold move, and if Elliot warns Lena first, then all bets are off, I finished quietly. We both knew that in Lena's hands the documents spelling out her misdeeds could vanish like smoke, smothered by her relentless spin and lies. Not to mention any fallout or vindictive vengeance she'd gleefully unleash on us all. But what other choice did we have? Sitting idly by had allowed her toxic web to spread unchecked this far. If we wanted any hope of saving Aiden from that poisonous environment, of protecting the rest of our family from her malice, we had to take one final, daring swing at the heart of her vile empire. Meeting Theo's steadfast gaze across the table, I saw the same conviction burning behind his eyes. No matter the risk, we couldn't let this insanity drag on any longer. Not while an innocent child's future hung in the balance. After all, that's what family was for, shielding our loved ones from those who wished to do them harm. And God help anyone who threatened a single hair on Aiden's head. With a grim nod, I reached for another file, and the planning began anew. One way or another, we'd bring Lena's house of lies crashing down around her, even if it meant raising our own family to the studs in the process. It was time. After weeks of meticulous planning and gathering evidence, Theo and I were ready to execute our gambit against Lena. The night before, we'd uploaded a comprehensive file dump to an anonymous web server, a digital dossier containing every scrap of proof we'd uncovered about Lena's neglect, manipulation, and wasteful spending. Incriminating bank statements, logged social media activity, even testimonies from others she'd mistreated over the years. All of it packaged together in one tidy bundle, waiting for our final keystrokes to release it upon the world. We planned to send the upload link directly to Elliot first, hoping the shock of the revelations would finally break whatever spell Lena had him under. But we also arranged for the files to automatically broadcast across multiple social platforms an hour later, ensuring widespread dispersal no matter how Lena tried to bury it. As the appointed hour ticked closer, my stomach twisted with nervous dread. This was it, our chance to protect Aiden and blow Lena's sham life apart for good. But the implications for the rest of our family... You ready for this? Theo's gruff voice pulled me from my whirling thoughts. He reached across the table to grasp my clammy hand, his own slightly trembling. We both knew there was no going back after this. I could only manage a tight nod, drawing a steadying breath. As I'll ever be. Theo's eyes crinkled at the corners with grim resignation. Then he turned toward the laptop between us. My heart kicked into overdrive as his finger hovered over the trackpad. For Aiden, he murmured. Our personal code for stealing our nerves these past few weeks. Another nod from me. For Aiden. And with that, he struck the upload key. Lena's exposure officially began. The file pinged to Elliot's inbox first, accompanied by a brief message. Open me, and you'll finally see the truth about your wife. I felt sick watching the progress bar crawl as the massive data dump transferred over. Every second dragged out like a Russian novel, each percentage increase seeming to taunt us with the damage we were about to unleash. How would Elliot react to this bombshell revelation about the woman he'd married? Would he immediately dismiss it as our bitter meddling? Or would the sheer enormity of evidence finally pierce whatever veil Lena had draped over his eyes? Most importantly, how vicious would Lena's retaliation be once she caught wind of our actions? A part of me was tempted to call the whole thing off, to snatch back this Pandora's box before its contents could contaminate our lives forever. But another insistent part, the one blazing with righteous fury over Lena's cruelty to Aiden, knew we'd finally crossed the Rubicon. There could be no half measures or surrender now, only scorched earth in the wake of our campaign. Suddenly, an alert box startled me from my daze. Transfer complete. The uploaded documents began ricocheting around the internet a second later, a widening digital diaspora every bit as uncontrollable as a raging bushfire. Within that first minute, a video compilation of Lena's greatest con hits began autoplaying on her own Instagram page, overlaying her palatial home videos with audio snippets of her vicious comments about Aiden and our family. Her comment sections, Twitter feeds, every social platform began melting down with a similar deluge of shocking evidence. Bank statements laid bare, archived posts and videos of her neglecting Aiden while living it up, personal messages mapping the intricate deceptions she'd spun. The bombardment was overwhelming, a digital tsunami crashing hard against the carefully curated facade she'd constructed over the years. And that was just the opening salvo in our counterstrike. Beside me, Theo let out a shuddering breath, half tension blowing off, half dawning realization of what we'd just set into motion. We watched the rapidly proliferating files ricochet across the web and across our community like a firestorm, the enormity of our actions finally striking home. Within the hour, news stations would pick up the story, then the national outlets and celebrity bloggers. And at the center would be our ground zero blast, a stark glimpse into the trauma and manipulation Lena had inflicted upon our family over these past years. It was finally too late to stop the shockwave. Our truth offensive had come for the house of Lena, and nothing would be left unscathed in its wake, not even our own family. The fallout from our cyber bombardment against Lena hit like a hurricane. Within hours, her immaculate online kingdom had been reduced to a smoking crater of shattered illusions and exposed lies. Social media ran rampant with screenshots, videos, and a gleeful dissection of every incriminating scrap of evidence we'd uncovered. Overnight, Lena went from influencer icon to radioactive pariah as her brands and sponsors began jumping ship in droves. As for me and Theo, we could only watch in a strange detachment as the firestorm raged, alternating between grim satisfaction and creeping dread over what this metamorphosis would mean for our family. We hadn't heard a peep from Elliot since uploading the files, leaving us to theorize in anxious silence over how deeply the revelations about his wife had shaken him. Would he emerge from the wreckage still defiantly loyal to Lena's lies? Or had our brutal truth offensive finally broken her spell over him? The answer came just after dawn, in a flurry of tense knocks at the door. Thank God. Theo exhaled in a ragged whisper when we saw Elliot's haggard face through the peephole. He ushered him inside, shooting me a worried glance. "Son, what's going on? We've been sick with—" The words died on his lips as Elliot staggered forward, eyes hollow and brimming with barely contained rage. I flinched, half expecting him to lash out at the source of this cataclysm. But then, with an anguished cry, he simply crumpled against Theo, shaking with suppressed sobs. Exchanging a wordless look with Theo, I moved to steady Elliot as he began to keen in harsh, gulping gasps, like a dam finally shattering deep within. "I'm sorry," he choked between ragged breaths. "God, I'm so sorry." My throat thickened at the sheer brokenness lacing his voice. After so many months of self-inflicted isolation at Lena's whim, seeing my own son return to us in such a state felt like a shard of ice piercing my heart. Eventually his sobs tapered enough for speech. "You were right about her. All this time you were right. Every vile thing she did to you, to Aiden." Another wave of anguish racked him, and he squeezed his eyes shut, burying his face in Theo's shoulder like a lost child. I exchanged a haunted look with my husband, words unspoken between us. We'd shattered her deceptions, yes, but at what cost to our son? Those messages, the videos. I can't believe I let it go on for so long. How I could be so blind. Hey, it's okay," Theo murmured gruffly, hands rubbing soothing circles on Elliot's back. "That's what she did, son. Manipulated you into her web, we get it." The harrowed look in his eyes said otherwise, that some part of us would never forgive ourselves for failing to extract Elliot sooner. But for now, simply cradling our child against the aftermath seemed more important. When his ragged breathing finally evened out, Elliot pulled back, eyes rimmed and face haggard. "I kicked her out last night, took Aiden and left after seeing everything." He gestured vaguely, then seemed to deflate all over again. "God, how could I let Hervis get so twisted? To put Aiden through all that?" I bit back a scathing remark about putting a stop to her antics sooner. My anger could keep for another day. Right now, my son needed comfort and a safe harbor to process this traumatic reckoning. So I simply held his gaze and nodded, hoping he could read the understanding there, and the promise that her reign of terror was over. Elliot's shoulders slumped, weariness crashing over him as the last vestiges of life before crumbled away. Leaning into Theo again, he squeezed his eyes shut. I don't know what I'd do without you both. After everything she put us through? The raw gratitude in his gravelly murmur was like a balm against all the suffering we'd endured this past year. Not that the road ahead would be easy. Lena would surely retaliate against this devastation in whatever ways she could. But in that moment, with our family united against her at long last, I felt a surge of defiance toward whatever vindictive storm still loomed ahead. She'd struck the first blows, set the rules of this scorched earth campaign. Now it was her turn to reap the whirlwind we'd sown. My eyes met Theo's over Elliot's bowed head. A silent vow passed between us, to ensure Lena never regained a foothold in our lives again. Not after this razing to the bedrock. Aiden's future and our family's well-being would remain secure, no matter how much we had to sacrifice to keep the she-wolf away. In the aftermath of our brutal takedown, the shockwaves rippled through every facet of our lives. But for the first time in what felt like an eternity, there was a sense of hope threaded through the upheaval. With Lena banished from our household, Elliot and Aiden took up semi-permanent residence in our spare bedroom as they worked to rebuild their lives from the wreckage she'd left behind. Watching my grandson set Phi into a routine free from her toxic influence was like a soothing balm after so much turmoil. Of course, Lena didn't slink off into oblivion quietly. Her initial defiance at the revelations morphed into a spiraling crusade of denials, threats, and attempts to regain control of the narrative. She's claiming we fabricated everything, Elliot told us one night at the dinner table, jaw clenched in barely contained fury. There's a new video saying we conspired against our own family out of jealousy. Theo grunted in disgust while I fought the urge to hurl my plate across the room. Even disgraced and dejected, that vile woman couldn't help lashing out like a cornered viper. Let her squirm, I spat, locking eyes with my son. The truth is finally out there, loud and clear for anyone who matters to see. You're right. Some of the tension drained from Elliot's shoulders with an exhausted slump. In that moment, he seemed to age years in a matter of seconds. Hell, it's all I can do not to put even more of her dirty laundry on blast right now. Despite the anger still simmering under his words, just having him back under our roof was like a weight lifted. Being able to see Aiden grow and play outside Lena's malign influence made every hardship worthwhile. Sure, she continued sniping and lobbing hateful allegations from her dwindling circle of sycophants. But without her manicured illusions to prop it up, the bluster rang increasingly hollow. While our family unit steadily regained its bearings and sense of purpose, the recharged bonds between Theo, me, and our boys were a constant through the transition. But nowhere was that bond more evident than in our renewed focus on Aiden's well-being. Having him around constantly, free from Lena's manipulation, revealed just how much she'd warped the sweet, innocent boy in her quest for notoriety. "Grandma, why didn't you like my party last time?" he asked me one sunny afternoon while blowing bubbles on the back patio. My gut twisted at the remembered humiliation, but when I glanced over at Aiden's cherubic features, so full of pure childhood curiosity, the truth came easily. "You know something, sweetheart? That whole big party, it wasn't really for you at all." I tickled his belly, earning a peal of giggles. "Your mommy just wanted to show off for her friends, not make you feel special." Aiden's tiny brow furrowed in confusion. "But I thought we were posed to have fun?" Leave it to the heartbreakingly earnest perspective of a child to cut straight through to the core truth. Smiling, I pulled him onto my lap and nuzzled his soft hair. "Of course we are, my little guy, and this time, I promise it's just going to be about us having fun together. No big fuss or showing off, okay?" My throat thickened as I drank in his radiant smile. "Because you're all the fun this old grandma needs." When his arms tightened around me in a fierce hug, I shot a look toward the patio door. Elliot and Theo were watching the tender scene, fondness and relief written across their faces. In that moment, with my family whole again and Lena's toxic presence banished, I felt as light and carefree as the bubbles drifting on the breeze, like awakening from a long, twisted nightmare finally behind us. Our war against Lena's malice had been brutal, with casualties strewn across both sides. But as I held my grandson close, savoring his unbridled joy, the battleground seemed a small price to pay. When Aiden's next milestone birthday arrived a few months later, we threw a small but rowdy bash in the backyard, a jumble of balloons, cheap pizza, and delighted shrieks as he tore through stack after stack of gifts showered on him by his adoring clan. No obscene overindulgences or camera crews, no vapid social media performances. Just the unconditional warmth and love of an extended family reveling in our reconnection. As I watched Theo gamely endure another round of the mechanized dancing robot Aiden had cajoled him into, my heart swelled with a sense of gratitude. For persevering through the darkest days and emerging victorious. For regaining the family I'd feared was lost forever to Lena's poisoned webs. Most of all, for ensuring my sweet grandson's bright future would remain unshackled by that vile woman's lust for attention at any cost. When Aiden came barreling over to demand another turn on the robot, Theo shot me a wink and an exaggerated grimace over the boy's head. A silent acknowledgement of how far we'd come to reclaim these simple family moments. Pulling them both close, I couldn't hide my radiant smile as the sounds of laughter and revelry swirled around us. Our family's new beginning had finally arrived.
"9 years ago, at the age of 38, I went through a divorce from my husband Nick, who was 40 at the time. We had been married for 3 years, and he had been a good husband until a significant misunderstanding led him to leave me. Within days, he served me with divorce papers without giving me an opportunity to explain the truth. Hurt and bewildered, I didn't contest the divorce. I simply let him go. I used to be a housewife, and on one fateful day, Nick unexpectedly walked in to find my ex-boyfriend Joe, also 38, at the house with me. The three of us knew each other from college, and Joe and I had dated for only 3 months before I realized my true feelings for Nick. Joe had come over to invite us to his upcoming wedding in a few months. Nothing suspicious was happening. However, Nick assumed the worst, left without a word, and even blocked all communication channels. Despite my attempts to explain and reach out, Nick drove away and cut off all contact. Devastated, I spent the next 2 days in a state of panic and tears. Joe also tried to explain, but even he was blocked. I believed Nick's anger would subside, and he would return, allowing me to clarify everything. Unfortunately, that never happened, and a few days later, Nick filed for divorce. Feeling helpless, I decided not to fight for my marriage, and as the divorce proceedings began, I moved in with a friend until I could establish my independence. It took time, but I eventually got my life back on track, securing a job and moving into my own apartment. Though angry and hurt by Nick's actions, I chose to focus on rebuilding my life. Even after the divorce was finalized, I was content with the little I gained from it. I attended Joe's wedding, reconnecting with college friends, while Nick remained absent as expected. Life took an unexpected turn when I met Chris, a 40-year-old man, at the wedding. Although sparks flew, I held back due to my recent divorce. We exchanged numbers, but didn't connect for a while. A year later, in a better mental state, I encountered Chris again at a work event. 2 years into dating, we got married, and another year later, we welcomed our daughter. Now, almost 5 years since my divorce from Nick, I've evolved into a new person. Despite moving on, I was recently shocked when Nick, after all these years, appeared at my doorstep, unannounced a few days ago. The impact of his unexpected return still lingers, leaving me in a state of disbelief. I never figured out how he managed to locate me, and truth be told, I didn't bother investigating later on. It was a weekend, and my husband and I were both home with our daughter when the doorbell unexpectedly rang. My astonishment peaked when I opened the door to find Nick standing there, holding a bouquet of roses, and smiling as if the past 9 years hadn't happened. Before I could fully process the surreal situation, he began explaining that a few weeks ago, he learned from a friend that Joe was married to someone else, not me. He claimed to have realized he had overreacted back then and wanted a second chance, asking for forgiveness. I was at a loss for words. The absurdity of him divorcing me over a misunderstanding years ago, without seeking the truth, was baffling. Now, after 9 years of silence, he believed he could waltz back into my life and ask for a second chance, the very thing he had denied me back then. Fat chance. While he continued talking, I stared at him in silence, contemplating my next move. I wanted to slam the door in his face, but that wouldn't suffice. So, opting for a more impactful response, I instructed him to wait and return to the living room where my husband and daughter were waiting. Without time for explanations, I scooped up my daughter, motioned for Chris to follow, and headed back to the front door. You can imagine the scene that unfolded. Nick was visibly horrified as I approached him with my daughter in my arms and my husband behind me. I smiled and informed him that he was a bit too late to request a second chance now, asking him to leave. After a brief moment of silence, he turned and hastily retreated to his car without uttering another word. Satisfied with my actions, I felt a sense of closure that had eluded me for years. Once he was gone, I sat Chris down, recounted the encounter with Nick, and we shared a good laugh over the audacity of his belief that I would take him back without question after what he had done to me 9 years ago. I couldn't fathom why he thought it was a good idea to spring this surprise on me without doing any research first. A glance at any of my social media accounts would have revealed that I was now married with a daughter. However, I suppose he couldn't access them due to my privacy settings. Even then, he couldn't have reached out to our old friends to find out what I was up to. Chris believes he's so self-centered that he assumed I would have waited around for him after he left, hoping that he'd come back someday. It sounds like a pretty accurate assessment of his character, even though Chris has never conversed with Nick. It's been a few days since the encounter, and I hoped he would leave me alone. Yet this morning, he messaged me on Facebook from a new account, expressing how hurt he was by my actions. He claimed he genuinely wanted to apologize for the past, but felt I had made a mockery of the situation. He still feels remorse for his past actions, but believes I owe him an apology for trying to humiliate him. AITA for what I did to Nick. Update 1. I decided not to respond to Nick's message. He didn't deserve even an ounce of my sympathy or forgiveness, let alone an apology. My husband was right. Nick assumed I'd still be waiting for him and would readily accept him once he was ready to come back. He had always been self-centered, a trait I had overlooked before marrying him. There were red flags I ignored, like his discomfort with me being around other guys, even just as friends. He convinced me to quit my job and be a housewife, claiming he didn't trust anyone else to take care of our home. Despite sacrificing for him, he didn't give me a chance to explain during the divorce. I always felt Nick was excessively jealous of Joe, my first boyfriend in college. Despite being loyal, he never trusted me. After our divorce, it took me a long time to recover and give love a second chance. Some say I jumped from one relationship to another too quickly, and perhaps it's true. However, I'm glad I took that leap of faith because now I have the best husband and a beautiful daughter. I won't apologize to Nick, but I do owe him thanks. If he hadn't left me, I might still be stuck in an unhappy marriage. Update 2. I discovered a couple more details about Nick. It turns out he had deleted all his social media, and for the past few years, he had been living and working in Seoul. Consequently, he lost touch with old friends, including those from college. He returned just a month ago, got in touch with a friend who knew about Joe's marriage but not mine, and that's how he ended up on my doorstep. It's still strange that he chose to approach me after almost a decade of no contact, but I've moved on from it. He hasn't messaged me since I ignored his last message, and I doubt he will. I also informed Joe about the incident, and he was just as shocked at Nick's audacity. My daughter asked about the man, but I didn't disclose the truth, stating he had the wrong address, which satisfied her curiosity. I don't plan on telling her unless she discovers it on her own, which seems unlikely. Update 3. After almost a week of no contact, Nick texted me again. I had forgotten to block him, which was my oversight, but I'm busy with work and not dwelling on it. In the text, he expressed a desire to meet, claiming he doesn't mind my husband and daughter and still wants to give our relationship another shot, insinuating that I'd be willing to cheat on my husband. This was ironic, considering he left me for that reason 9 years ago. I was disgusted by his text, blocked his number, and made it clear I wanted him to leave me alone. His delusional belief that I still have feelings for him is baffling, and I find his messages repulsive. Update 4. Some accusations suggest I'm still into Nick, which is not true. I hate him, and I believe it's a natural sentiment given our history. I shared the text with Chris because I value honesty in my marriage, and I would never jeopardize it by engaging in any such behavior. I love Chris more than anything and would never knowingly let Nick back into my life. I acknowledge my habit of not checking who's at the door when my husband is home, and I'm working on changing that. Nevertheless, I would never intentionally welcome Nick back into my life. I have no desire to have him back in my life, so it's disheartening that people are making such accusations. I hope this clarifies things. Update 5. Nick showed up again, but this time, I didn't open the door without checking first. Thankfully, my daughter was out with my husband. I was caught up with work, and when I realized it was Nick, I told him through the door that he needed to leave and wasn't welcome anymore. Despite my clear message, he refused to listen. He informed me he was in town for a couple more weeks before leaving for another country, stating that this would be convenient for us to get together. I was appalled by his suggestion to cheat on my husband and gave him 3 seconds to leave. When he didn't take it seriously, I called the police, and they had to intervene. My daughter wasn't present, but I immediately informed my husband, Chris, who returned within an hour to ensure my well-being. I felt a bit shaken by the incident, but I'm okay. I don't know how he found out where I live. The friend who informed him about Joe being married wasn't close enough to me to know my marital status or address. I feel uneasy and uncomfortable in my own home. I'm fortunate that he's here for only a few more weeks, and I'm relying on that to keep him away. However, I'm more concerned about my daughter's safety. While he doesn't seem dangerous yet, I wouldn't put it past him. Even during the police intervention, he begged for one chance, showing signs of delusion. My husband and I are considering increasing security measures and seeking advice from his uncle, who works in the police, to address this unsettling situation. Update 6. I discovered how Nick traced me. One of my college friends gave my address to Nick's old friend without asking me first. She apologized several times, but I'm still upset about the situation. I haven't heard from Nick since the police escorted him away, but we're contemplating moving just in case he lied about his stay duration. Chris and I don't want to take any risks, especially with our daughter attending school nearby. The situation has left me feeling paranoid and anxious. We're still contemplating a move, and ironically, the only thing holding us back is our daughter's love for our home. She has been upset since learning that we might have to leave. Any tips on how to handle this are welcome. Meanwhile, we're trying to find a solution that ensures our safety without compromising our current situation. Update 7. Nick has moved to Canada, confirmed by multiple sources. He's back on social media, and I've blocked the new number he used to text me. In his message, he claimed he believed something could have happened between us the day the police were involved, but implied I was too scared. He expressed a delusional hope that I would realize I still loved him, and that my husband was merely an obstacle. He even suggested adopting my daughter to demonstrate his devotion. I couldn't fathom such delusion, but at least he's gone. I'm relieved I no longer have to deal with this, and that we didn't have to move. My daughter's happiness in staying in her beloved home is what matters most. Knowing we're not in danger has lessened my worries, although we're keeping security measures in place for added reassurance. Chris and I read Nick's final message together, finding it ridiculous that he still believed I would want him after seeing my family. I shared the text with Joe, who had a similar reaction. I'm still not speaking to the friend who gave Nick my address, as her actions were irresponsible and unforgivable. Regardless, Chris and I are planning a vacation to the beach, my daughter's favorite place, to let off some steam. These past weeks have been incredibly stressful, and I feel like I've earned a break. Thanks for all the love and support, and stay tuned for more stories from Argo Relationships. My mother's furious voice echoed through the house, commanding me to leave. The intensity of her anger was palpable, and she gripped a kitchen knife tightly in her hand. In her rage, she disowned me, accusing me of being a burden and not contributing to the household expenses. The irony stung, as I contributed more than half of my $3,000 monthly income to the family. Desperate to make her understand, I attempted to explain, but she remained obstinate, brandishing the knife as a chilling display of her frustration. Cautiously, I kept my distance, mindful not to provoke her further. My name is Catherine, a 29-year-old systems engineer at a major corporation. My journey into this career was inspired by my father's love for computers. Despite my successful career, a sudden turn of events shook our lives. My father, the source of my inspiration, suffered a subarachnoid hemorrhage, leading to immediate surgery. Although the operation was successful, the aftermath hinted at lasting effects, raising concerns about our financial stability without his income. While I dedicatedly juggled my demanding job and caregiving responsibilities, my mother's priorities shifted. Instead of offering support, she focused on my father's ability to return to work during his recovery. Witnessing his struggles, I suggested I take on the role of caregiver, but my mother dismissed the idea, citing her busy schedule. Returning home to care for my father, I found myself shouldering not only caregiving duties, but also the entire burden of household chores. Despite her initial claims of self-sufficiency, my mother had neglected the chores, leaving me overwhelmed with the responsibilities. Juggling work, caregiving, and household tasks became a daunting challenge. Meanwhile, my father, though physically weaker, expressed gratitude and apologized for the trouble. Undeterred, I reassured him and cherished the moments spent together. Despite my efforts, my mother continued to criticize, finding fault in my cooking and questioning my commitment as a daughter. Determined to address her concerns about my father's nutrition, I adjusted my approach, preparing smaller dishes to accommodate his changed appetite. After increasing the variety of dishes, my mom remained silent. A few days later, she complained that there were too many dishes in the meals, citing my parents' age and their inability to consume such quantities. She questioned my ability to save money, noting that I had been living alone until now. In response, I explained that I added more side dishes not because she instructed me to do so, but to prevent Dad from getting tired of the food and to stimulate his appetite. Mom accused me of having an attitude, as if she had been constantly nagging and undoing my efforts. Reluctantly, she moved to the sofa and demanded coffee. As I cleaned up, she threw a cushion at me, insisting I hurry up and make coffee, claiming that I'm always at home, not working, and just after Dad's retirement money. Despite my attempts to clarify that I work from home, she failed to understand. In her perception, I apparently moved back home under the pretense of taking care of Dad, without contributing to living expenses, despite my efforts in caring for Dad, earning money for our living expenses, and managing all the housework. She believed I was misusing Dad's retirement money. Frustrated and reaching my limit, feeling sorry for Dad but unable to continue living in the same house, I accompanied him to physical therapy a few days later. The doctor's encouragement was overshadowed by the sight of Mom hastily leaving home with large bags upon our return. The next day, I discovered that all my cherished bags and accessories were gone. Confronting Mom, I questioned if she had entered my room. Justifying her actions, she claimed it was her house, and she could enter any room. I inquired about a luxury brand bag she had, criticizing her spending on such items despite advising me not to waste money. Angry and upset, I learned that she had sold my bags and accessories without consulting me. The significant amount of money was used for her own hobbies. Shouting in frustration, I demanded their return and repayment. However, my mom, transformed into a figure of anger, yelled back, unable to believe her own daughter was talking back, resembling a confrontation with a demon. During my childhood, I obediently listened to my parents and worked hard for them. Now, as an adult, I find myself taking care of them. Despite my requests for my mom to contribute in caring for Dad, she claims to be doing her part while, in reality, she is the one receiving the most care. It's disheartening to witness my dad, who has resigned himself to the lack of care from my mom, still making efforts to communicate with her, only to have her vanish when he starts talking. Lost in contemplation, I confronted my mom, who remained silent. Suddenly, she turned away from me, stormed to the kitchen, and returned with a kitchen knife, a furious expression on her face. In a fit of rage, she demanded that I leave, accusing me of being a parasitic leech, waiting for my dad's retirement money. Frustrated by the realization that my efforts and words were falling on deaf ears, I decided it was time to find a new place and swiftly move out. Slowly distancing myself from my mother, I rushed into my room when she made no attempt to follow. Despite expecting not to feel sadness due to her usual emotional distance, tears welled up, fueled by intense anger. Swiftly, I began preparations to move out. I sought assistance from a colleague at work who had connections in real estate. With their help, I quickly found a new place. During my free time, I packed my belongings into boxes. When everything was ready, I'd opened up to my dad about my mother's behavior. He expressed regret and apologized, acknowledging that he had sensed something was amiss but struggled to address it. He revealed that my mom had treated him poorly too, and he was contemplating a divorce. Grateful for my support, he thanked me and agreed with my decision to move out. A few days later, when my mom was away at her hula dance classes and lunch with friends, we seized the opportunity to move. Movers arrived on a Wednesday morning when we were confident she wouldn't be home. As our belongings were loaded onto the truck, a sense of sadness crept in. In a rented car, my dad and I embarked on our journey to escape my mom's toxic environment. He questioned if it was the right choice, suggesting I could have taken the chance to be free from caregiving. Assuring him it was the right decision, I expressed how happy living with him made me feel. The move was completed by the afternoon, and over takeout lunch we reminisced. I apologized for the convenience store lunch boxes, and my dad shared that we used to eat them often before my return. Even the simplest conversations made the meal taste delicious. After a break, we began unpacking and settling into our new life. Just as we were getting accustomed to the change, the phone rang. It was my mom. I answered the call, and my mother immediately panicked, questioning why our belongings were gone. I calmly informed her that Dad and I had made the decision to move out together. Concerned about living expenses without Dad's pension and retirement fund, she doubted our ability to afford a high-rise condo. I reassured her, explaining that I had a stable job and contributed financially to the family. However, she accused me of spending Dad's retirement fund on designer bags, despite my clarification that I had been supporting the family. I reminded her that Dad had tried to communicate my job situation to her, but she had never listened. Money was her primary concern, and her financial management was careless. Growing impatient, Dad dropped a bombshell. We were getting a divorce. Mom panicked about her living expenses, but Dad assured her that she could live freely without interference. He mentioned sending divorce papers for her to sign later and hung up without further explanation. Dad apologized for making me feel bad, and I expressed my gratitude. The next day, we headed to the hospital for Dad's appointment. Unexpectedly, we found my mother waiting near the entrance. She approached, inquiring about the previous day's phone call and asserting that she wouldn't allow us to live in a nice place by ourselves. Suddenly, she grabbed my hand, insisting on living in the high-rise too. Despite my calm demeanor, she refused to accept our decision. I asked her to let me live my own life, but she persisted, leading me to threaten calling the police. Eventually releasing her grip, she hurriedly left as hospital staff and security approached. I apologized for the commotion, attributing it to my mother's actions. A subsequent argument took place, and as I observed my mother's back near the hospital entrance, she seemed weaker than usual. In the days that followed, she tried to find us around the hospital, but only confronted people she perceived as weaker. After being chased away by security guards and assertive patients, she stopped showing up. That hospital encounter marked the last time I saw my mother. Subsequently, my father consulted a lawyer and actively pursued the divorce process. Unhappy about the divorce, my mother made a fuss demanding money. The lawyer explained alimony, but when she realized she wouldn't receive any, she resorted to tears and begging. The lawyer directed her to financial assistance centers, and the divorce process continued. Eventually, the divorce was finalized, and my father decided to sell the house. Initially opposed to the idea, my mother changed her stance upon learning she would receive money from the property division. After selling the house, our lives became more peaceful. Juggling work, caregiving, and housekeeping, I found support in daytime caregivers, and Dad's condition gradually improved. One day, my mother called, requesting money. I declined, stating that I couldn't provide more and asking her to leave us alone. Despite changing my number to stop her calls, she persisted using different numbers. Later, I heard from mutual acquaintances that she was living in a small apartment, working part-time, and barely managing on her own. Dad, upon hearing this, remarked that she had finally learned to stand on her own 2 feet. Reflecting quietly, I admitted that he might have spoiled her too much. When I asked if he was happy now, he thanked me and apologized for the trouble life had caused me. I'm Chloe, an architect by profession, and in that moment, I was a bride walking down the aisle. Every detail of my wedding had been meticulously planned, from the flower arrangements to the playlist that would serenade us through the night. I had always envisioned this day as a scene straight out of a romance novel, where love conquers all. Jack, my fiancé, stood at the altar with a nervous smile. An engineer, logical and straightforward, the yin to my creative yang. I believed we complemented each other well, excited to embark on this new chapter of life together. However, as our eyes met, I noticed a distant look in Jack's eyes, almost burdened. Dismissing it as nervousness, I proceeded down the aisle. Yet my unease deepened when my would-be mother-in-law, Linda, leaned over to her neighbor, whispering something with narrowed eyes, sizing me up. When our eyes met, she forced a smile, mouthing, "You look beautiful," but the smile didn't reach her eyes. As the ceremony continued, and the pastor asked if Jack took me to be his lawfully wedded wife, there was an agonizing pause before he finally said, "I do." However, his eyes lacked the warmth I had always associated with those words. During the ring exchange, Linda stood up, taking a photo, declaring loudly that we must capture the moment, stating that weddings are just the first day of a lifelong commitment, her words more a warning than a blessing. At the reception, Linda approached me with a saccharine tone, commenting on my unconventional dress and hinting at my rebellious nature, trying to keep the atmosphere light. I responded, "I believe weddings are a celebration of love, so why stick to convention?" Yet Jack's intervention, though momentarily relieving, carried a resignation that shouldn't be present on such a joyous day. As the first dance began, Jack held me at arm's length, our bodies swaying in rhythm but our souls feeling miles apart. The song, meant to be an anthem of our love, mocked me, and Jack's question, "So, Mrs. Chloe, ready for forever?" echoed in the cavernous space between us. Unsure of what forever held, I said yes, hoping the ominous cloud hanging over us would lift. Little did I know, this was just the prelude to a saga that would test not just my marriage, but the very core of who I was. The feeling that something had already come to an end lingered, even as everyone raised their glasses to toast our new beginning. After the wedding, returning to my cozy 3-bedroom dwelling, purchased with years of hard work, was supposed to be our sanctuary. But the walls that I thought would protect us turned into a prison, a stage for domestic warfare. Linda's subtle invasion began, marked by frequent unannounced visits and relentless criticism. culminating in the shocking announcement that she would be living with us. As she claimed a corner of what was once my reading nook, my heart sank, and I looked at Jack, pleading for him to intervene. I managed to pull him aside, my voice quivering. "This is our home, and we should have discussed this before any decision was made." He looked at me, his eyes void of the love I thought I had seen just a few months ago. "Mom's getting older, Chloe. She shouldn't be alone. She should be with family," he said, emphasizing the last word, as if I weren't considered family. "So I'm not family? Is that what you're saying?" I questioned, feeling the hot sting of tears starting to form. "You know that's not what I mean," he retorted, clearly exasperated. "But Mom has done a lot for me, and I owe her this much." "What about what we owe each other? We just got married, Jack. This is supposed to be our time to grow as a couple, not play house with your mom." But my arguments fell on deaf ears. The decision was made just like that. My opinion, my feelings, my home, none of it seemed to matter. And so Lyndon moved in, turning the love nest I had envisioned into a battlefield of egos, tensions, and outright hostility. Every room in the house felt heavier, suffocated by her presence. I could no longer find a quiet corner to read, a peaceful moment to reflect, or even a loving glance from the man I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. That's how I realized I wasn't just fighting for my marriage or my home. I was fighting for my identity, my dignity, and my peace of mind. All the while, a single thought echoed through my head. How did it come to this? How did my life, my home, my choices become secondary to the whims of someone else? My reading nook was now a shrine to Linda's possessions, my kitchen a stage for her criticisms, and my husband, well, he was a stranger siding with the enemy. And all of this was just the beginning. If I thought life was hard before, it was nothing compared to the living nightmare that followed. The atmosphere in the house grew denser each day, as if the walls themselves were closing in on me. What made it even worse was the undeniable 2 blue lines on the pregnancy test I held in my trembling hands. I had always imagined sharing the news of my first pregnancy as a moment of joy, an occasion to be cherished. But as I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror, eyes red from restrained tears, I realized this milestone had turned into a millstone around my neck. When I told Jack about the pregnancy, his response was as lackluster as ever. "Well, that's something," he mumbled before quickly changing the topic to discuss a home improvement project his mother had suggested. It was Linda, of course, who took the reins of my pregnancy as though it were her divine mission. She began dictating my diet, my activities, and even the hospital where I would deliver. But her intrusion didn't stop at unsolicited advice. She managed to turn my pregnancy into another venue for her psychological warfare. "You're eating again," she would say, her eyes darting towards the modest sandwich I'd made for myself. "Shouldn't you be careful about gaining weight during pregnancy? This is doctor recommended, Linda." I'd reply, mustering all the patience I had left. "Doctors these days don't know what they're talking about. Back in my time, we knew how to handle pregnancies," she'd counter. And so it continued. As the weeks went by, my energy waned, but Linda's expectations soared. She turned my home into her personal palace, ordering me to clean, cook, and cater to her needs as if I were a servant rather than a daughter-in-law, and a pregnant one at that. "Chloe, why haven't you vacuumed the living room yet?" She'd yell from her self-assigned throne, my old reading nook where she'd spend hours scrolling through her phone or watching daytime TV. "I've been feeling really tired today, Linda. The doctor advised me to take it easy," I said, my voice tinged with desperation. Tiredness during pregnancy isn't an illness, you know. Jack once again remained conspicuously silent, his compliance deafening. The tension reached a breaking point during another heated dinner discussion, where Linda decided to critique my choice of baby names. "That's a ridiculous name for a child. You might as well pin a kick me sign on his back for his entire school life," Linda sneered. "Enough is enough, Linda. This is my child, and I have a say in how to raise him or her," I snapped, my patience finally depleted. "Oh, so now you're talking back to me." Linda's eyes flared, her voice escalating. Jack intervened. but not in the way I had hoped. "Chloe, you're being emotional. Mom's just giving her opinion," he said. I looked at him, then at Linda, and then at the house that had turned into a nightmare. I felt trapped, humiliated, and utterly alone. I could barely recognize the woman staring back at me in the reflection of my tarnished wedding ring. A woman who was slowly losing everything she had once valued: her home, her dignity, and most devastatingly, her will to fight. And that's when it happened, the ultimate betrayal. Linda, filled with venomous triumph, looked me dead in the eyes and said, "If you can't handle a simple family discussion, maybe you shouldn't be a part of this family." Jack said nothing. His silence spoke volumes, cutting deeper than any words ever could. In that moment, I realized that my nightmare wasn't unfolding. It had already unfolded, and I was living in it. My life had become an unrecognizable maze of shattered hopes and suppressed sobs. I moved like a zombie through the rooms that no longer felt like my home. The baby inside me seemed to be the only living part of my existence, and I clung to that tiny spark of life as my last shred of hope. But even that was threatened. One cold evening marked my breaking point. We were having another one of those god-awful family dinners, where tension cut through the air like a knife. I had spent hours on my feet cooking a meal that I knew Linda would find fault with, no matter how perfect it was. Each critique was a jab, each scoff a slap. I knew another one was coming, and I braced myself for it. But when it finally came, it was worse than anything she'd said before. "You really think you're fit to be a mother if you can't even manage a household? What are you going to do with a baby?" Linda sneered. My heart sank into my stomach, each word a stab at my already fragile self-esteem. I felt my hands tremble, my eyes blur. But before I could say anything, Jack joined in, sealing my emotional fate. "Mom has a point, Chloe. You need to step it up. We're going to be parents soon." That was it, the final straw. A bolt of anger mixed with a lifetime's worth of resentment and humiliation surged through me. "Step it up? Step it up?" I shouted, surprising even myself with the intensity of my voice. "I am carrying our child for months, managing our house, and putting up with relentless emotional abuse from your mother, and you tell me to step it up." Both Jack and Linda looked stunned, but I was on a roll. A volcano finally erupting after years of suppression. "I'm done. I can't do this anymore," I said, my voice cracking. "I won't raise my child in an environment where their mother is treated like dirt. If you two are what family means, then I don't want any part of it." With that, I left the table, leaving them both in speechless disbelief. I packed a small bag and headed for the door, my trembling hands struggling to turn the doorknob. That's when Linda decided to deliver her ultimate blow. "Where do you think you're going? This is Jack's house, not yours." I turned around, my eyes locking onto hers. "Actually, Linda, this is my house. I bought it, and I have every right to say who stays and who leaves." "Chloe, don't do this. Let's talk about it," Jack pleaded, finally realizing the gravity of what was happening. "There's nothing left to talk about," I said, tears streaming down my face. With that, I stepped out into the frigid night air, no coat, no plan, just an overwhelming urge to escape. As the door shut behind me, it felt like the closing chapter, the final act of a tragedy that had stretched on for too long. I began to walk, each step a painful reminder of the life I was leaving behind. I had no idea where I was going, but it didn't matter. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was taking control of my destiny. But the cost of my newfound freedom was high, agonizingly high. The icy wind pierced through my thin clothes as I trudged along the deserted streets. I had walked for what felt like miles, lost in a haze of emotional and physical exhaustion. I was almost there, almost at my parents' house. A sanctuary from the hell my life had become, when my foot caught on an uneven slab of pavement. I stumbled, twisting my ankle painfully as I fell to the ground. The pain was sharp, but it couldn't match the ache in my heart. Limping and teary-eyed, I finally made it to my parents' doorstep. The look of horror on their faces as they opened the door told me everything I needed to know. My breaking point had come. a long overdue fracture in a life burdened with far too many cracks. As they rushed me to the hospital, I knew something had to change. I couldn't go back, not to the house, not to Jack, and certainly not to the woman I had become. My breaking point wasn't just an end, it was also a beginning, a painful but necessary step toward reclaiming the life that had been taken from me. Hospital rooms have a peculiar way of forcing reality upon you. As I lay there, my sprained ankle elevated, and my body checked for any complications due to my fall. I felt a mix of relief and apprehension. My parents were there, their faces etched with concern and quiet fury over what had transpired. They'd always suspected that my marriage was far from ideal, but the depths of its dysfunction had finally been laid bare. "Chloe, sweetheart, what are you going to do now?" My mom finally broke the silence, her voice heavy with worry. "I don't know, Mom, but what I do know is that I can't go back to that life. Not now, not ever," I replied, my own voice firmer than I expected. My dad, who had been pacing the room, finally spoke. "Your mother and I will support whatever decision you make, but you need to think about your future and the future of your child," he said. I nodded, having been doing nothing but thinking, my mind a labyrinth of potential scenarios, each one fraught with uncertainty but also tinged with the promise of freedom. It was then that my phone buzzed. It was a text from Jack. "Chloe, where are you? We need to talk." Ignoring the text, I switched off my phone. Whatever he had to say, it was too little, too late. I was done talking. My actions would speak louder than his words ever could. My first move was a call to a family lawyer, a decisive step in putting an end to my disastrous marriage. With my parents by my side, we discussed divorce proceedings, child custody, and alimony. There was something chillingly clinical about dissecting a failed relationship in legal terms, but it also instilled in me a sense of empowerment. For the first time, I was taking control of my life, making choices that prioritized my well-being and that of my unborn child. A week later, Jack and Linda were served divorce papers and a notice of eviction from the house. My house. The lawyer also included a clause for a hefty child support payment and financial compensation for the emotional distress I had endured. It felt drastic but necessary, a harsh severing of the bonds that had chained me for so long. When I finally turned my phone back on, I was bombarded by a flurry of messages and missed calls from Jack. "Chloe, please, can we talk about this?" I didn't realize how bad things had gotten. Followed by another message, "I'm sorry, Chloe. I never wanted any of this to happen. Let's find a way to make it right." For a fleeting moment, I was tempted to call him back, to hear him out. But then I remembered the long nights of humiliation, the years of emotional neglect, and Linda's insidious cruelty that he had silently endorsed. Any affection I had for him was now buried under the ruins of our broken marriage. I deleted the messages, erased his number, and blocked him on all social media platforms. As far as I was concerned, Jack was now part of my past, a painful chapter in a book I was ready to close. I knew the journey ahead would be filled with its own set of challenges. Divorce proceedings are never simple, especially when a child is involved. But for the first time in years, I felt like I was steering the course of my own life. A painful journey, but one that led away from the darkness that had consumed me and towards a future that, while uncertain, held the promise of something better. The courtroom had that sterile, cold air that seems exclusive to places where lives can change in an instant. My lawyer sat next to me, a stack of papers in front of her, radiating confidence. My parents were behind me, their moral support palpable across the room. Jack sat with a look of defeated bewilderment, his mother Linda beside him, her face a mask of indignant disbelief. "All rise," the bailiff announced, and Judge Morrison entered the room. The divorce proceeding was a whirlwind of legalese, a barrage of facts and accusations laid bare for the court to dissect. As the evidence of Linda's abusive behavior and Jack's neglect was presented, I watched their faces contort, perhaps truly seeing themselves for the first time through the eyes of the law and through my eyes. The judge turned to Linda. "Mrs. Davis, you stand accused of emotional abuse and harassment. The evidence is overwhelming. How do you plead? Your Honor, this is all taken out of context. I was only looking out for my son's well-being, Linda stammered, her voice lacking its usual arrogance. It appears your definition of well-being is quite twisted, Judge Morrison retorted, clearly unimpressed. Finally, the judge rendered her verdict. The court hereby grants Chloe Davis a full divorce from Jack Davis. Custody of the unborn child will be given to Chloe. Jack Davis, you are required to pay child support as determined by the state. And Mrs. Linda Davis, considering the extensive evidence of your emotional abuse and harassment, I'm fining you $100,000 for your actions. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders as the gavel came down, but it was a bittersweet relief. My marriage had ended, not with a bang, but with a quiet rustling of legal papers. I was free, but at a cost I never could have imagined when I said, I do. As we left the courtroom, Jack approached me, a lost look in his eyes. Chloe, I'm so sorry. I never thought we'd end up here. I stared at him, seeing the man I had once thought I would spend my life with, and all I felt was a void where love used to be. I didn't think so either, Jack, but here we are. It's too late for sorry now, I said, turning my back on him and walking away. Linda tried to make eye contact as I passed her, perhaps seeking some form of acknowledgement or forgiveness, but I gave her none. She had taken so much from me. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of knowing she still mattered. When I stepped out of the courthouse, the sun seemed a little brighter, the world a bit more colorful. It was as if I was seeing everything through new eyes not clouded by constant anxiety and emotional distress. It was the beginning of a new chapter for me, one written on my own terms. My mother hugged me tightly, tears in her eyes. You did it, Chloe. You're free, and it's all thanks to you and Dad. I couldn't have gone through this without your support, I replied, grateful beyond words. We'll always be here for you, Dad said, joining in the group hug. And for your new beginning. That night, I sat alone in my house, the house that was now truly mine, and felt a sense of peace settle over me. I was alone, but I wasn't lonely. For the first time in years, the only expectations I had to live up to were my own. I was still apprehensive about the challenges that lay ahead. After all, I was going to be a single mother with all the responsibilities that entailed. But as I touched my belly, feeling the gentle stirrings of my unborn child, I knew it would be okay. My painful journey had led me to this reckoning, and while scars remained, they were now a part of a story of survival, not defeat. I was ready for whatever came next, not because I had to be, but because I chose to be, and that made all the difference. It had been nearly 3 days since I had lost contact with my husband. Despite his prior notification that he would be unresponsive for a while, my growing concern prompted me to consider calling the police. Just as I contemplated this step, a phone call interrupted my thoughts. It was one of his subordinates, saying, "Senior, your husband has been killed in an accident." Shocked and unable to process the news, I rushed to the hospital, only to find my husband transformed. My name is Lisa, a 28-year-old woman married for 2 years. We live together, both working for an ID company. Although we aspire to have children, it hasn't happened yet. My husband, Hero, 2 years my senior, is dedicated to his work. I vividly remember the day he joyfully announced his potential promotion. His happiness was contagious, and despite his tireless efforts, I couldn't help but feel proud. However, as the days passed, I noticed a change in Hero's behavior. He started working even longer hours, often returning home well past midnight, and working on weekends became a regular occurrence. The once frequent outings on our days off gradually ceased. I couldn't understand why he seemed unaffected by the relentless workload. Moreover, his attitude toward me grew colder. Despite my concerns, he showed no signs of fatigue. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss, questioning the strangeness of it all. Determined to address the growing concerns about my husband's changed behavior, I waited for him to return from his overtime work. As he walked through the door, exhaustion evident on his face, I mustered the courage to broach the subject. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" I asked. His response was curt. "What is it?" "I'm tired and want to go to bed early." I pointed out his habitual late-night phone use before sleep, suggesting it might be affecting his rest. His defensive reaction was swift. "What I do with my free time is up to me, right?" Undeterred, I questioned his seemingly excessive workload, especially after his recent promotion. His expression momentarily hardened, and I seized the opportunity to express my concerns about the toll it was taking on him. "You work too many holidays, and it's not fair to make your employees work so hard," I said. His response was dismissive. "I can't help it. You can't understand what I do. I'm tired, and I'm coming home, so don't meddle." With that, he left the living room, leaving me in turmoil. The unease lingered, and one fateful day, after a work-related accident that left me bruised and hospitalized, I desperately tried to reach him for support. However, my attempts were met with silence. Hours passed, and frustration built as my husband remained unresponsive. Finally connecting with him, I explained the urgency of the situation. His response, filled with indifference and an unexpected lack of concern, left me speechless. "I'm sorry, but I'm in an urgent situation." "What do you mean?" "I was in an accident on my way home and had to be hospitalized. I have pain all over my body, but they said it was nothing life-threatening." "What are you doing to me?" His callous reply, urging me not to get into an accident when he's busy and disclaiming responsibility for my car, left me stunned and at a loss for words. I had asked my husband to bring me a change of clothes, a simple request in light of the accident that had left me hospitalized. However, his response was far from supportive. "Why should I do that? I'm tired from work, and I have to go all the way to the hospital for some idiot who had an accident because of her carelessness," he retorted, labeling me as the cause of the mishap despite it being the fault of the other driver. His harsh words stung, and he refused to come to the hospital or respond to my messages, leaving me on my own. The abrupt end to our call resonated in my ears, bringing me to tears. It was disheartening to see how indifferent he had become, prioritizing work over my well-being. With no family nearby, I had no option but to procure what I needed from the store. Despite numerous attempts to contact him, 3 days passed without a response. The worry intensified as I considered various possibilities, including the unsettling thought that he might have been in an accident himself. Just as my concern reached its peak, a knock echoed in my hospital room. Answering the door, I was greeted by Yuri, a colleague I typically got along with. Grateful for her visit, I explained the situation. Yuri expressed her surprise upon learning about the accident and reassured me that, despite the severity of the incident, I was fortunate to be doing well. As we conversed, the visiting hours came to an end, and Yuri, preparing to leave, hesitated. Her troubled expression hinted at something unspoken, as if she harbored concerns or information she was hesitant to share. Anxiety gripped me as I nervously questioned Yuri. "Is something wrong?" She hesitated before responding. "I'm sorry, Lisa. I don't think this is the right time to say this, but I saw something. I saw Lisa's husband walking with Misa." The revelation hit me like a tidal wave. "What? When was that?" I asked, my mind racing to piece together the timeline. Misa, a junior employee at our company, had been under my mentorship since her early days. We still shared weekly lunches, maintaining a connection that spanned several years. The last time Misa and my husband crossed paths was likely at our wedding. Could it be that they had met then? The impossible notion sprouted in my mind, and I couldn't dismiss the worst-case scenario. Yuri recounted her observations from 3 days ago, mentioning Misa carrying a case. A sinking feeling enveloped me. I contacted my husband's office, confirming Yuri's account. He had indeed taken paid leave 3 days ago. The pieces fell into place, confirming my fears. The man I loved and the junior colleague I trusted had betrayed me simultaneously. The realization struck hard. Had the relationship begun even before his intensified work schedule? Each instance of his suspicious behavior replayed in my mind, and the truth became painfully clear. Subconsciously, I had been calling him repeatedly in the past few days, knowing he wouldn't answer. Yet, I refused to let him off easily, persistently ringing until he finally answered, his voice filled with displeasure. "What's the matter with you? You're so persistent. I told you I wouldn't answer for a while. What's so important that you can't respect that?" "I'm working every day." "I'm at work every single day," my husband retorted defensively. Unconvinced, I countered, "You've taken a holiday until tomorrow. What on earth are you doing?" His hesitation was palpable, as if he still believed he had room for deception. Swiftly, he began to weave excuses, denying any time off. I cut through his attempts to play dumb, stating, "I'd already checked with the company. I know everything. Just confess." Frustrated and perhaps realizing he could no longer conceal the truth, my husband admitted, "I'm exposed, right?" "That's right. I'm traveling with Misa." "If you understand, don't interrupt me, ugly." His callous words stung. When I pressed further, he callously added, "I'll divorce you when I get back. Don't bother me." The phone call ended abruptly, and with it, the love I had for him transformed into intense hatred. The betrayal was unforgivable. Determined to take matters into my own hands, I vowed revenge. However, before I could act, fate intervened. The next day, discharged from the hospital and able to move around, I'd opened my phone to seek legal assistance for revenge. As I scrolled through options, my husband's name flashed on the screen with a call from his faithful partner, Misa. Startled, I hesitated, realizing there was no escaping the confrontation that lay ahead. I answered the phone with trepidation, and Misa's trembling voice immediately reached my ears. "Hello, Lissa Sr. I'm sorry. It's common sense to apologize in person, not over the phone," I responded, trying to maintain composure despite the unexpected call. Acknowledging the unconventional nature of the apology, Misa pressed on, explaining, "Yes, that's right, but I don't have time for this." Before I could react, she dropped a bombshell that left me in shock. "Lissa Sr., your husband died in an accident." Stunned, I struggled to find words. "What are you talking about? Hero is on a business trip with you right now, isn't he?" I countered, desperately clinging to the hope that there was some mistake. Misa proceeded to share a heartbreaking story. According to her, on their way home from the airport, both she and my husband were involved in an accident. Hero had been hit by a car, and despite her immediate call for an ambulance, he showed no signs of life. The news was too much to comprehend. I hung up the phone, quickly informed the nurse of the situation, and rushed to my husband's side. Contrary to my expectation of finding him in a mortuary, Hero was still alive, but seriously injured. The accident had left him with broken bones, and he was now on crutches. Amidst the chaos, Misa arrived breathless. Her shock was palpable as she realized my husband was still alive. Knowing that Hero was in critical condition, I informed Misa that we would discuss the matter at a later date and decided to leave the hospital that day. In the ensuing days, Hero managed to survive, but the accident left him paralyzed from the waist down, confining him to a wheelchair. His parents-in-law, upon learning the details of the affair trip, expressed fury. Despite any personal feelings they may have had, my in-laws unequivocally scolded him, blaming him for bringing this upon himself through the affair. I made a call to both Misa and my husband, intending to discuss the situation. Upon entering my husband's hospital room, I was taken aback by the loud argument that greeted me. "If you hadn't pushed me that time, I wouldn't be in this situation. It's all your fault," my husband accused angrily. Misa retorted, "You're the one who suggested we go that way. Don't blame others. You insisted on the trip, and that's what got us into this mess. I paid for the whole trip. I want my money back in payment for my medical treatment." The heated exchange continued, each blaming the other without a hint of awareness regarding my presence. Frustrated, I reached my limit. With a forceful push of the hospital room door, I took a deep breath and sternly declared, "Stop arguing. This is neither the time nor the place. Hero needs us now more than ever, and we must support him. You cheated on your wife in the first place. Take your blaming elsewhere. Lisa Sr., finally noticing me, tensed up. Unperturbed by her reaction, I continued, "How can you two fight under such circumstances? Do you realize the gravity of the situation?" Hero, the first to respond, attempted to reassure me. "Lisa, don't worry. I'm breaking up with this woman. I only have you after all." Shocked, I couldn't contain my disbelief. "What are you saying now? We're getting a divorce, right?" I exploded, frustrated by the nonchalant expression on my husband's face. "You said it yourself. You claimed you would divorce me if you left or had a fight with your lover. Are you out of your mind? I can't live my life with you, Lisa." "Why?" my husband declared, his tone cutting through the air. Shocked, I responded, "I thought you loved me. Don't be ridiculous. You were the one who blustered and said you were divorcing me. Then, when things got bad, you went back together. Don't ever show your face in front of me again. You'll regret it for the rest of your life." My vehement yelling left my husband in a state of shock, and Misa, who was present, turned pale and trembled. Later that day, I was discharged from the hospital and decided to return to my parents' home for a while. Through my lawyer, the divorce from Hero was finalized. Both he and Misa were charged alimony, which they paid in a lump sum. As a consequence of this fiasco, Hero was fired from his job. The money he had spent on the affair was deducted from his company expenses. Additionally, his paralysis from the waist down led to his dismissal, leaving him with only a claim for damages against the company. Finding a new job with his physical condition would prove challenging. Word of Misa's affair with my husband spread throughout the company, resulting in a sudden turn of sentiments against her. Unable to bear the hostile atmosphere, Misa repeatedly missed work without permission. Eventually, she submitted a resignation letter. Now the two of them are unlikely to lead a decent life again. Despite their downfall, I feel no sympathy for them. It's a disaster of their own making. On the other hand, I rented an apartment near my office and started a new life. Colleagues approached me out of concern or curiosity, and while my feelings are mixed and indescribable, I aim to enjoy my own life without being pushed around by others. Silly rumors will soon be put to rest, and I look forward to embracing a new chapter on my terms. Second story. My husband Jack made a startling revelation after receiving his inheritance. "I don't need a life with you anymore. I'm inheriting $5 million. I don't need you when I have that money." His cold words signaled the end of our marriage, marking the culmination of a long period of living together where I felt like nothing more than an obstacle. Little did he know, a significant secret was associated with the $5 million inheritance. "Mom, is it true that Grandpa is in critical condition?" My daughter Sophie's unexpected question caught me off guard. The serious health problem of Ethan, Jack's father, was supposed to be a secret between Jack and me. "Did you get that information from your dad?" The only one who might have told Sophie was Jack. "Yes, and on a call from Dad, he told me to renounce Grandpa's inheritance." Sophie's words unsettled me, and because of this single phone call, my peaceful life was about to be disrupted. A few days after the call with Sophie, Ethan passed away peacefully. Since getting married, I had lived with Jack's parents, supporting them when their health worsened. It had been 5 years since Jack's mother passed away, and now, with Ethan's passing, the funeral went smoothly. However, just when I thought I was freed from tension, my husband's behavior changed dramatically. "What are you doing here? Why hasn't it been cleaned properly lately?" Jack frequently pointed out minor dust and small stains. "I'm sorry, I must have missed it. I'll clean it right now. This place isn't cleaned well either." "Do you really clean every day?" "Of course, I clean with the same routine as always." Even though I cleaned just as always, I couldn't understand why Jack was so angry, but it seemed the issue wasn't just about cleaning. "Why are you serving this? I wish you'd pay more attention to the taste when you cook. It's hard when the dishes I put effort into are criticized one by one. Even the dishes he used to enjoy were now unappreciated. Is there something bothering you lately?" I plucked up the courage to ask, but it seemed to worsen his mood. It's useless to deny it. To be honest, the food you make isn't good. I've been tolerating it because my parents never complained. But I've always felt its tastelessness deep down. Jack's words pierced my heart coldly and sharply. It was the first time he had ever criticized me so severely. I knew when Jack was this upset, anything I said would only fan the flames. My mom always cleaned and did laundry perfectly, and at meal times, she cooked with care without cutting corners. You're nothing like her. I've been patient, but I can't stand it any longer. This was the first time he compared me to his mother and criticized me. All I could do was reflect deeply on myself. I'm truly sorry. I couldn't have imagined that he valued my cooking so little. Jack always used to smile and say it's delicious when we first got married, and his mother gave me cooking advice. To think he has always found my cooking tasteless, tears started to flow uncontrollably. Do you think anything will change if you cry? Your tears mean nothing now. Don't show them to me. Lately, everything just feels so tedious. After saying those words, Jack suddenly stood up and left the house, slamming the door behind him. As he walked away, I called out, "Jack, where are you going? Come back." But it seemed he didn't hear me. My mind was in turmoil, unable to keep up with this sudden change, unable to understand what had just happened. Until a few months ago, we were a couple who shared everything, holding hands, sharing the small joys of daily life, and tackling minor grievances together. I couldn't fathom why we had grown so distant, and then it hit me. I remembered the content of Sophie's call. It was about Ethan's inheritance. There was a hint of hesitation in Sophie's voice that night. Jack had come home much later than usual, and I missed the opportunity to ask him about it. Was there something going on? Perhaps Jack had discovered some information about the inheritance and wanted to keep it to himself. I tried to approach Sophie, wondering why they were discussing inheritance while Grandpa was still in good health. She expressed doubts about Jack's actions and mentioned conveying the same to him. If the way the inheritance is divided doesn't change, it will all fall into my hands. Considering Sophie, I believed this was the best way, recalling Jack's recent cold behavior towards her. Doubts crossed my mind. If he intended to take all the inheritance and abandon me. This thought tightened my chest, and tears welled up in my eyes. In my pain, I became acutely aware of the sounds around me. Just as the room became eerily silent, the sudden ring of the phone echoed throughout. I didn't feel up to answering, but it could be important. Checking the caller ID, I saw Jack's name, the same Jack who had left the house earlier. Picking up felt tiresome, but I also didn't want to face any backlash for ignoring it, so I hesitantly answered. "What are you doing? Don't keep me waiting. I'm running out of time." His sudden, authoritative tone took me by surprise. He was indeed stubborn at times, but he wasn't someone who would yell without a reason. In the past, shocked by his changed demeanor, I let out a slight sigh, hoping he wouldn't notice. "What's wrong? Is there a problem?" "I have something to talk about. I'll be home soon. Stay home and wait for me." Lately, his voice sounded unmistakably colder than before. I replied with a brief "okay" and promptly hung up. Looking at the clock, more than 3 hours had already passed since Jack went out. I had been crying, overwhelmed with confusion and pain, and I hadn't realized how much time had passed. After a while, I heard the door open and Jack's footsteps. A sweet scent of body wash, one we didn't use at home, wafted from him. That unfamiliar smell intensified the pain in my chest. "I'll be straight. I want to end our relationship. As a token of gratitude, I'll give you $220,000. His words were something I have feared deep down. Still facing this reality, the shock was so immense that I felt tears drying up. "I'm genuinely tired of you not managing things at home. I want to live peacefully in my old age." Linda had dreamt of a peaceful old age. However, the one who began to shatter that dream was none other than Jack. In front of her, he continued, "Why are you here?" Her words trailed off as she searched for what to say. Jack looked at her with a smug smile. At that moment, A bright ringtone from Jack's cell phone filled the room, the unfamiliar tone clearly different from his usual one. "I'm sorry, but I haven't finished my errands yet." Linda sensed a slight softness in Jack's voice, different from how he usually sounded towards her. It felt somewhat kinder and more intimate. Furthermore, the sweet scent of body wash in the room, the unique ringtone from earlier, and the changed tone of his voice. All these events hinted at something he might be hiding. Linda whispered quietly so that Jack wouldn't hear. "I knew it." He had been too overt about his external affair. Considering the inheritance he might be getting soon, the alimony might be insignificant for him, even if his infidelity becomes evident. After ending his call, Jack looked down at Linda with emotionless, cold eyes. "My intentions haven't changed. I want you to sign this document. I'll contact you later. Make sure to have it signed by then. I don't plan to come back to this house. Remember, this house is now yours." Without uttering another word or even looking at my face, Jack headed towards the door. What did our long marital life of 40 years mean? A few days later, I found myself in a lawyer's office, gathering information about Jack's actions and Ethan's inheritance. As I explained everything to our daughter, Sophie, her complexion changed. It was painful to reveal our mistakes to our daughter, but out of love for me, Sophie let her emotions out and shed tears. She then showed strong determination to confront Jack and introduced me to a lawyer to support us. "Hello, I am Robinson. I will be handling your case. I will support you to the best of my ability," said the woman named Robinson, sitting across from me. She seemed to be in her late 40s, exuding a calm aura. Her neatly groomed hair and professional attire gave off a reassuring vibe. Her clear way of speaking provided me with a sense of reassurance. "I'm truly sorry for approaching you suddenly. My name is Lily Johnson. I'm a bit nervous since it's our first meeting under such circumstances," I admitted. "That's all right. I had already received some information from Sophie, so I was able to talk in detail with peace of mind," reassured Robinson. Based on what I had researched over the days and the information Robinson separately gathered for me, we verified the facts. My husband doesn't have any siblings, so if our daughter Sophie renounces the inheritance, the huge fortune, which amounts to about $5 million, will all go to my husband. Also, his affair with a woman named Jennifer began at a bar they happened to visit, and it seemed their relationship continued for about 6 months. She seems quite different from me, and I was curious about what happened between her and my husband. Through joint investigation with Mrs. Robinson, we were able to uncover an important fact that my husband might not yet know about. Mrs. Robinson then asked me, "How do you intend to proceed from here?" in a gentle tone with soft eyes. "Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I deeply appreciate it," I replied, smiling towards Mrs. Robinson. After a brief exchange, I handed over the feed for the procedures, and I quietly left the office. 5 days later, I received a call from Jack on my cell phone. He proposed a meeting at a quiet cafe, and I arrived a bit earlier than our scheduled time. The cafe was surprisingly empty, and the owner warmly welcomed me, suggesting I pick any seat. I chose a seat by the window to enjoy the calm outside view. After a while, the entrance bell rang, and in my line of sight stood Jack and his new girlfriend Jennifer. When Jack saw me, he smirked with a sense of pride. "Are you prepared for the divorce?" was his surprising first statement. It seemed he was convinced he was in full control. "Is this your new associate?" I hadn't expected him to bring her to such an important discussion, and I was astonished at his decision. I wondered if he was the man I once deeply loved, and whether he had changed because he cheated or if he was always like this. "Are you Jack's wife, right?" "My name is Jennifer. I've recently started dating him," she said, smiling. I couldn't quite grasp the meaning of her sudden smile. "I've heard a lot about you from Jack. Seeing you in person, you do look a bit aged. I wonder how Jack endured all these years. Indeed, Jennifer seems to take great care of her appearance. She looks much younger than her actual age. In her 60s, compared to her, I might look my age, but I couldn't accept the way she phrased it. It's those tendencies of yours I warned you about. But indeed, I did think that. But Jack, if it were me, I would cherish you more, I said. Jack replied, I don't want you to overthink it anymore. I just want you to file the divorce papers. I was taken aback by Jack's expected attitude. Hold on. There's something I want to discuss, I said, and a hint of confusion was evident on Jack's face. What are you getting at? Is it all about your father's inheritance? Is that why, after all our years of marriage, you're deciding this? I wanted to know the truth behind all these events. I can't see how my father's inheritance and you are related. That's solely my father's. I've heard detailed stories about your father's vast inheritance from Sophie. I know how much it's worth, so what? That inheritance isn't for you to take. But I'll answer. Actually, more than the inheritance itself, the end of taking care of my parents is one of the reasons I want to part with you. Just a caregiver role. How had Jack seen me only as a caregiver and not the loving wife I used to be? I don't even have the energy to cry. Can we speed this up, Jack? And I want to start our new life. Besides, have you still not let go of Jack? Don't make me repeat myself. I'm not thinking of a new start with you. Now I want you to file the divorce papers. Waves of emotion struck my heart with intense anger and deep sadness. My hand quivered slightly. Taking a deep breath, I pulled out the divorce papers, but my name wasn't written yet. The situation isn't settled yet. To hand it over, you remember promising me the house and money, right? I clearly remember when we talked about it. Yeah, I did say that. I'm a man of my word, so I plan to give you the house and money, Jack replied. You say you're kind, but a truly kind person wouldn't just use their wife as a mere caregiver and then abandon her. So I'm demanding rightful compensation of $30,000 and the rights to the house. What compensation? When we talked about money, it was supposed to be $20,000. You always nitpick at the very end. Your attitude of trying to pay me the absolute minimum is so obvious. But the difference of $10,000 means a lot to me. So, I believe $30,000 as compensation is fair. Your girlfriend, it's Jennifer, right? I thought of claiming from her too, but in lieu of that, I want to settle for $30,000, and I intend to sign the divorce papers right here in front of you. Jennifer reacted unexpectedly, first commenting about $30,000 being fine. Jack, pay it if you're satisfied with it. With Jennifer's statement, Jack finally accepted the alimony of $30,000. Now we needed Jack's signature on the land title change document Mrs. Robinson prepared and the notarized alimony agreement. Jack looked surprised by my preparations, but I calmly said, I have a life to continue, and I eased his suspicions. We took out our respective seals, lined up at the designated spot, and Jack smiled as if he anticipated something. So, Linda, will you sign the divorce papers right now? Understood, I said. Here's the divorce paper. As I carefully wrote my name and firmly stamped it, Jack couldn't hold back his laughter and laughed out loud. With this, you and I no longer have any relationship. Also, I have something to tell you. Actually, I'm set to inherit $5 million, so I didn't need someone like you anymore. Thanks for the divorce. What a foolish ex-wife you had, letting go so easily for just $30,000. Behind me, as I left, the loud laughter of Jack and Jennifer echoed. I hurriedly left and headed to City Hall. My only goal now is to complete this procedure as quickly as possible and sever ties with the two of them completely. They might be laughing happily now, but I wondered how long their happiness would last. A month later, I quickly sold the house I received from Jack, prepared for a new life, and decided to live near my daughter Sophie, who planned to start her life near her husband's parents' home. Since Jack's mother lived nearby, I thought there would inevitably be moments I'd feel cautious. Contrary to my concerns, Sophie's husband warmly welcomed me and was always considerate, which I found very reassuring. My daughter Sophie seemed angry at Jack's actions at first, but when I told her a certain fact, her expression changed completely, and she smiled brightly. I had a hunch that Jack would soon realize my plan. As proof, I deliberately didn't change my mobile number. The day that intuition became a reality came sooner than I thought. From the afternoon, my mobile rang repeatedly, and sure enough, it was Jack. He called many times, but at first I purposely didn't answer. After receiving repeated calls, I finally picked up. "Hello, why are you doing this?" I couldn't hide my surprise. "What's the matter?" "You called out of the blue, raising your voice. What's the problem?" "Where are you right now?" I thought he might have visited the house we used to live in, but in reality, that house had already been sold, and the new tenant might have moved in, or it could have become an empty lot. Considering this fact, the image of Jack's panicked demeanor surfaced in my mind, and I felt a little sorry for him. "Since we've decided to divorce, there's no need for you to be involved anymore." "Where did Sophie go?" "I can't find her." "It seems he went to Sophie's previous house." Of course, she wasn't there, and I managed all the information and procedures related to Sophie's husband's family home, so Jack had no way of knowing. "He seems to have hit a dead end and contacted me." I answered, "Yes, actually, Sophie has moved to a new place." "Why didn't you tell me something so important? Moreover, did you know about that too?" It seems my husband finally realized the truth. By that, are you referring to the significant hidden debt that Ethan had? Actually, when I investigated Ethan's inheritance in detail, I was shocked by the amount of the inheritance. But at the same time, I found out about a considerable hidden debt. Probably, while he was alive, he estimated he could repay the debt with about $5 million and hid that fact from us. However, he passed away midway through repayment, and the hidden debt was left neglected. And when you officially receive an inheritance, you are also obliged to inherit such hidden debts. Jack was blinded by the allure of easy money and neglected thorough verification and investigation. That was his big mistake. So, I have a question. Did you really know about my dad's debt? Information is easy to come by. It becomes clear to anyone with a little search. That's why I noticed it. I imagined Jack turning red with anger on the other end of the phone. Anyway, what about the promised money? What about the money you intended to return? I had my suspicions, but his real goal was money after all. Besides, about that property. If I had known about my dad's debt from the beginning, I wouldn't have gotten involved at all. I understand how you feel. I thought it deep down, but I chose not to say it. But think about it. Putting aside the money issue for a moment, you got to marry a very attractive woman, right? Isn't that pretty lucky? Of course, I don't know if Jennifer chose Jack because of his assets or if it was truly love. As soon as Jennifer found out about my debt, she left me. I thought she would. It's exactly as I expected. Linda, think about it. How about starting over with me? I feel deceived by Jennifer. I just realized now you're the person I really need. The tone of Jack's voice suddenly dropped and became emotional. I wondered if he has forgotten everything he did to me. I'm cornered. Every day, I'm being rushed by collectors, and the debt I can't repay is piling up. I'm at my limit. I really feel my life is in danger. Help me, please. Even after hearing his desperate plea, I calmly thought, if I were in this situation, would Jack help me? I carefully chose my words and took a deep breath before answering. Right now, I'm living peacefully and am truly satisfied. My relationship with my mother-in-law, Christine, has always been strained. Despite her mistreatment over the years, she's now asking for a significant favor from me. However, I'm seriously considering using the money for myself instead of fulfilling her request. Let me share my story. My mother-in-law has never treated me well, and the recent request she made comes after a history of disrespect. Even though she urged me to talk about my concerns before bidding me goodnight yesterday, she had called me a murderer among other hurtful things just a few days ago. She even told my daughter that she was good for nothing. I'm a 33-year-old woman who lost my husband in an accident 2 months ago, which was a profound shock for me and my children. Despite the challenges, I focused on supporting my kids. This led me to the decision to let Christine live with us after Ian's death, even though our relationship had never been positive. Christine and I never got along, and my late husband would attribute it to common behavior among mothers. I kept many of our conflicts hidden from him to avoid upsetting him. However, Christine's animosity towards me was apparent. She attempted to kick me out of the house multiple times and threatened to take my children away, claiming I wasn't fit to be a mother. Despite my efforts to be a perfect daughter-in-law, Christine continued to dislike me for irrational reasons. I eventually accepted that nothing would change her opinion, and I chose to ignore her petty and unreasonable behavior. Unfortunately, Christine's health deteriorated, and my biggest fear shifted from preserving my marriage to losing it. She had moved in 8 months before Ian's death, and during that time, she would complain to him and plant unfounded thoughts in his mind. Although those arguments are in the past, the memories linger, especially the ones involving my son Adam. My eldest, Adam, easily saw through Christine's manipulations and grew to dislike her. I discovered him arguing with her on multiple occasions, and he expressed his desire for her not to live with us anymore. I didn't intervene, as I was relieved that Adam saw the truth and was wise enough to shield his younger sisters from Christine's influence. After Ian's death and the funeral, the tensions persist, and now, faced with a hefty request from Christine, I'm contemplating redirecting the funds for my own well-being. Initially, I made the decision to ask Christine to move out, overwhelmed by the financial strain and the added responsibility of supporting another person. However, practicalities forced me to reconsider. Paying for a nurse to be with her in her own apartment was costly, and Ian had been opposed to the idea of placing her in an elderly home. Despite the challenges posed by Christine's presence, she did contribute by helping with cleaning and cooking, the latter being a point of contention as she claimed I was lacking in the kitchen. While it was irksome at first, I eventually let her take charge of the cooking, making my life more predictable. My routine involved enduring insults about my cooking and cleaning skills, consoling my children after Christine's outbursts, attempting to calm down my son Adam, and ending the day with a stress-induced headache. However, things took an unexpected turn when a lawyer visited me 6 days ago in response to our previous phone conversations. Desperate for cash, I had hoped for assets to sell or leverage. My financial worries seemed to dissipate when I inherited a significant amount from Ian. This windfall offered a lifeline, enabling me to support my family, avoid transferring my girls to another school, and even pursue my dream of starting a catering business. Excitedly, I shared the news with Adam, who, despite his joy, insisted on taking a gap year. Although I refrained from pressing the issue, I cautioned him not to disclose the newfound wealth. However, Christine eventually learned about the money and, surprisingly, showed a more humane side, asking how much I had received. This abrupt change in her behavior raised suspicions, especially considering she had never asked me for money before Ian's passing. Adam, perceptive as ever, believed Christine was putting on an act. Now faced with uncertainty, I grapple with whether to ignore his hunch or address the apparent shift in Christine's demeanor. The idea of confronting her about the sudden interest in the money crossed my mind, but instead, I considered the option of moving her back to her house and resuming the expense of hiring a nurse. It begged the question, was this a prudent use of money? This decision came shortly after my recent windfall. Adam's insight about his grandmother proved accurate. It became evident that her primary concern was the money Ian had left in his will. Consequently, I made the difficult decision to cut her off from the family, knowing well that dealing with Christine was never an easy task. When I broached the subject of her moving out, explaining that it was better for both me and the children, and that she could receive the care she apparently needed from a nurse, Christine initially resisted. She expressed her contentment living with me. Despite a brief argument during the second discussion, I decided to drop the matter, considering her recent tolerable behavior. However, my trust in her was shattered when I went out 4 days ago. Engaging in the initial steps of establishing my catering business, I received a request to prepare homemade snacks for an acquaintance. Upon returning home with supplies, I discovered my bedroom in disarray. After some reflection and confrontation, it became clear that Christine had rummaged through my belongings in my absence. The audacity of her actions shocked me. When I confronted her, she refused to disclose her motives and denied taking anything specific. Although nothing seemed missing, I couldn't shake the feeling that she had been searching for something among the papers in my room. For the time being, my immediate concern was the violation of privacy rather than any tangible loss. I needed to focus on building my business, having successfully delivered the snacks and secured another gig. The mystery of Christine's actions would have to wait. Contemplating ways to promote my cooking venture, I decided to create business cards to distribute among neighbors and even my children. However, my focus shifted back to the challenge of persuading Christine to move out. I approached her once again yesterday, expressing my need for personal space to concentrate on turning my cooking into a profitable venture. Unexpectedly, Christine resisted, offering to assist with my cooking. Despite declining her help, she became agitated. She presented me with two options, either letting her stay and help or allowing her to remain and be a constant annoyance. It became evident that removing my mother-in-law from the house would be no easy task. My determination to evict her intensified after a conversation with my youngest daughter, Susie. Adam, who usually picked her up from school, had something to attend to that day. Susie questioned why I wanted Christine out, revealing that Christine had been feeding her lies, claiming I hated her and wanted nothing to do with her. Susie expressed disappointment, insisting that her grandmother needed care and family time. Despite assuring Susie that Christine was merely joking, inwardly, I was seething. The realization that Christine was manipulating my children and turning them against me left me fuming. That night, Adam and Cecilia sensed my mood upon their return. Despite my attempts to hide it, I excused myself to my bedroom, asking Adam to handle everything. I questioned why Christine would resort to such actions, especially since my suggestion for her to move out was rooted in minimizing problems and ensuring better care for her. It seemed Christine was crossing boundaries and playing games with my children. Determined to address the situation, I decided that this should no longer remain a private family matter. The following morning, after the kids left, I had a one-on-one confrontation with Christine. I informed Christine firmly that she would be moving out of the house, and I made arrangements for her to return to her former apartment, which fortunately was vacant. Despite her resistance, I reminded her that she was in my house now, as everything had been left to me and the children. I suggested she leave voluntarily, avoiding the need for me to force her out, which would result in a reduction of the financial support I was providing. Christine responded by hurling various insults my way, but I chose to ignore them. My focus was on her departure, and I was prepared to show my true colors and be perceived as heartless if it meant relieving myself of the burden she had become. She left before the children returned, and I concocted a story for them, explaining that Christine had chosen to live on her own for a while but would visit soon. Although I disliked lying to my children, I believed it was necessary. With Christine out of the picture, I felt a tremendous weight lifted off my shoulders. My plan was to dedicate all my attention to my children and my work moving forward. Update number 2 brought an unexpected twist. Just over a month after leaving the house, Christine returned, causing a scene and threatening trouble if I didn't allow her to stay in what she referred to as her son's house. To avoid further disturbance, I let her inside with the intention of understanding her motives. Christine asserted that she was here to stay and that no threats would force her out. Then she dropped a bombshell. She accused me of coercing Ian into leaving everything to me and the children, neglecting her entirely. She vowed to prove it, even if it meant going to court, and threatened to take away everything Ian had left. Her accusations left me bewildered. While I had considered the absence of Christine in the will, I chose not to question the lawyer at the time. Ian must have had his reasons for excluding his mother. Perhaps he didn't anticipate her outliving him, especially given her health condition. Nevertheless, I recognized that nothing could be altered in the will, and my empathy was proving challenging for my own well-being. I reluctantly allowed Christine to stay the night, assuring myself that her departure would be ensured the next day. My son, though unhappy with my decision, eased up when I explained that Christine's stay was only temporary. In contrast, Cecilia and Susie were delighted to see their grandmother. However, my reservations persisted, recognizing that Christine, despite her familial connection, lacked the qualities of a positive role model or a genuinely good person. The following morning, I was confronted with a heated argument between Christine and Adam. My daughters looked frightened, prompting me to intervene. Upon inquiry, I discovered that Christine was questioning Cecilia about Ian's will. Adam, who overheard them, intervened and told Christine to cease her line of questioning. In response, Christine raised her voice and threatened to evict both me and my son once she proved that I tampered with the will. Enraged by Christine's audacity and hurtful comments toward my children, I had reached my limit. I quickly ushered my children out of the house, driving all four of us to the courthouse to file for a restraining order against Christine. After dropping my children off at a cafe, I returned home to confront Christine, informing her of the legal action I had taken. I made it clear that her continued stay in the house would not matter once the restraining order was in place, and with that, I left her in the bedroom. About half an hour later, I heard her leave, relieved that she had at least the sense to comply. Christine proved to be all talk and no substance when faced with a firm stance. I finally enjoyed a week of peace of mind until Christine started excessively calling. Choosing to ignore most of her calls and even blocking her, I found some reprieve. However, she resorted to calling on the landline, and when I answered, it turned out to be the nurse taking care of Christine, informing me of her deteriorating health. Advised to take her to the hospital due to rising blood pressure, I faced yet another unexpected turn of events. I suspected that Christine's health crisis might be another ploy to manipulate me into taking her back, but I decided to verify. After accompanying her to the hospital, it became clear that her condition was genuine. For the first time since meeting Christine, I felt genuine pity for her. The doctor explained that she needed an extended hospital stay and 24/7 attention, and she lacked health insurance. However, the estimated cost of her treatment presented a dilemma. I had already allocated a significant amount of money I had left behind for my children's education and to build my business. If I used it for Christine's treatment, I have little left for my family. The only alternative was dipping into funds I had set aside, a decision I wasn't sure about. Balancing my responsibilities to my family and recognizing Christine as Ian's mother and the children's grandmother complicated matters. Feeling confused, I sought advice from others and provided an update. While Christine had caused trouble in my life, I couldn't easily abandon her. Update number 3 expressed gratitude for the advice received. Still perplexed, I discussed the situation with Adam, seeking his perspective. Surprisingly, he expressed hesitance to cover Christine's bills, considering the turmoil she had caused and might cause in the future. Shocked by Adam's response, I acknowledged my desire for Christine to recover, but questioned whether it was my sole responsibility to address her predicament. Despite this conversation, I remained conflicted about how to proceed. I pondered Christine's dependence on Ian and the passing of that responsibility to me. Eventually, I had a discussion with the doctor the next day. Reluctantly, I agreed to contribute to Christine's hospital fees. When I approached her, she looked worn and weary, but I remained steadfast in my decision. I made it clear that while I didn't want to cover her entire hospital expenses, I was willing to pay a substantial portion. The catch? She had to agree to leave me and my children alone. During a catering delivery, I overheard a client discussing a nearby state's senior care facility. Intrigued, I researched it and decided that once Christine recovered, that would be her new residence. Providing her with all the necessary details, I hoped she would consider the idea. However, Christine's initial silence gave way to lamenting Ian's death and resuming insults, Even on what could have been her deathbed, she showed no regard for me. Christine then demanded that I settle all the bills, justifying it by Anne being the one who earned the money. Asserting that the money was now mine, I criticized her stubbornness. The insults continued, but I remained unfazed, accustomed to her hurtful words. She attempted emotional blackmail, referencing my children and Ian, but I stood my ground. Considering leaving her fate to chance, Christine called me back, reluctantly agreeing to my conditions. Due to the restraining order, she couldn't approach me or my children anyway. Though Christine was discharged after 9 days, the doctor advised constant vigilance. For a week, she stayed with me and the children, and when the arrangements for her departure were finalized, she left without incident. I experienced a twinge of guilt, noticing a hint of sadness in Christine's eyes as she departed. Yet, I remained resolute in my decision. It was too late to turn back now. Nearly 2 decades into my marriage, Christine chose to treat us as a family only now. For once, her emotions were no longer my concern. Ensuring Christine received the remaining deposit intended for her landlord, initially allocated for a month's stay, I encouraged her to keep the money for emergencies. I also took on the responsibility of managing her finances, severing any further ties. When I inquired about the possibility of visits, Christine responded with a malicious laugh and a curt refusal. I found her answer satisfactory, needing only to concoct a suitable excuse when my children inevitably asked about their grandmother. Surprisingly, they didn't, and the weeks without Christine's presence were peaceful. I recently checked in on her, a gesture out to Ian, and learned she was not unwell. Adam, seeking guidance on his college plans, had indicated that he needed to figure things out. As someone who didn't follow the traditional college path, I found myself uncertain about advising him. On a positive note, my mini catering business thrived, bringing happiness to me and my children. With the hope of avoiding serious obstacles in the future, we continued our journey. The comments received from the previous story indicated a lack of satisfaction with how I handled the situation. Many expressed the wish that I had cut off all contact without extending assistance, even though I had established ground rules before agreeing to cover part of Christine's hospital expenses. I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on this matter. If you're new to the channel, I'm Mr. Reddito, and I narrate various dramatic stories every day, including mother-in-law dramas, inheritance disputes, cheating stories, Karen encounters, wedding fiascos, and more. I look forward to your thoughts, and remember, it's cool to be kind. Have a great day. I've been hesitant to involve myself with my brother Kevin for the past 5 years. Our relationship took a significant hit when I discovered, at the age of 22, that my girlfriend of 3 years was having an affair with him. This betrayal led to the end of my relationship, and I moved back in with my parents, sharing proof of the affair with them. Despite Kevin's attempts to reconcile and apologize, I maintained my distance, prompting my parents to organize an intervention involving my ex, Kevin, and extended family. However, instead of fostering forgiveness, this intervention deepened my hurt and resentment. Unable to bear the pain, I eventually decided to cut ties with Kevin and my parents, except for occasional contact with a cousin due to my grandmother's health issues. Recently, during a visit to the hospital, I unexpectedly encountered Kevin. Though he expressed a desire to talk and reconcile, I feigned ignorance, leaving him emotional and distraught. Learning about Kevin's deteriorating mental health since our estrangement, my parents pleaded with me to reconnect with him, insisting that my support could alleviate his suffering. Despite their pleas, I adamantly refused, expressing my belief that Kevin's mental well-being shouldn't rest on my shoulders. My refusal led to Kevin attempting self-harm, which my parents attributed to my rejection. Faced with this distressing situation, I grappled with conflicting emotions, torn between the desire to protect my own well-being and the pain inflicted on my brother. In reflecting on my experiences, I struggled to reconcile the profound sense of betrayal with the familial bond we once shared. Despite external pressure and the genuine concern for Kevin's mental health, I find myself unable to forgive and rebuild a relationship that was shattered by his actions. In grappling with the aftermath, I question whether my decision to keep my distance makes me the wrongdoer in this familial saga. I have been in a relationship with my girlfriend, Janine, for 8 years. While our connection has been strong in many aspects, our intimate life has dwindled significantly over the past 2 years, reaching a point where we haven't been intimate for 4 months. Despite my efforts to address and resolve this issue, Janine has shown reluctance to seek medical help or engage in couples therapy. As we planned to move in together and buy a house, I expressed my concern about our intimate life, stating that I wasn't comfortable taking the next step without improvement in that aspect. This discussion stemmed from a prior agreement where Janine had acknowledged the need to work on our intimate life before moving forward. However, she hadn't made any efforts or taken any actions during that year. When I shared my hesitation to pursue the next stage of our relationship due to the unresolved issue, Janine became furious, accusing me of holding our future hostage for more intimacy. She left, and since then, I've received a text message informing me that she won't be attending a planned dinner date until I decide not to be in a hole anymore. While I believe my concerns are valid, I'm now questioning if I am the one at fault for halting our plans and potentially jeopardizing our future together. Am I the a-hole for prioritizing our sexual compatibility before committing to buying a house and taking our relationship further?